So I'll call the meeting to order right at 7 o'clock. We've got a good crowd. I assume it will be for the official map and zoning, but we've got a lot on our agenda, so we'll get started right away. So the first item is additions, additions and deletions. We'll add that to the agenda.
To the agenda first.
So any additions or deletions to the agenda that we have published?
Yes, I have a couple additions. The Working Communities Grant Proposal was supposed to be on the agenda. Jess Hyman from CVO EO is here to discuss that. So I would suggest adding that into the agenda right after the public hearing.
Okay.
And then we will need to utilize the executive session for an update on union negotiations.
So the last item on our agenda is executive session, and so we will plan to go into executive session. And the way we'll do that, if we end up going into executive session, we'll close off the broadcast, go into executive session. Any actions that the select board takes will come out of executive session and take those actions, and they'll be recorded in the minutes. Is there any public comment about anything that's not on the agenda? All right. And apologize, it's a tight fit. We do like using this space because everybody can hear. I think the downfall is we can only fit so many. We weren't sure how many we were going to get, but that's fine. We've outdone our typical crowd.
Yeah, there's
Couple more seats here. So with that, first item on the agenda is to open a public hearing. We got to vote for that, I guess. Yeah, so take a motion to open the public hearing for the official map and zoning regulations.
I'll make that motion for you. Second.
All right, any discussion about that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Alex, if I don't describe this correctly, let me know. But so this is part of the process for new zoning regulations. The official map is part of that. So the Planning Commission has gone through their process. They've had open a couple public meetings. They've gotten feedback. They then fed the regulations to the Select Board, where we've provided feedback. The regulations and/or the official map was adjusted as necessary during that process. At this point, the Select Board has sort of accepted what's been presented, and now as part of the process to make this official, we have this official open public meeting. Any of the other ones people could have attended, but this is the official open public meeting where we hear input, any questions, more discussion, and at this point, the Select Board can decide to move forward with it as is. If there are minor changes, can we do that, Alex?
Not really.
Not
no.
really. Okay.
If there are any changes other than typographical, then you would want to make those and warn a new hearing.
So go back to the previous step of
Yep.
another open meeting. Okay. So with that, I mean, I assume there'll be a lot of discussion, so we can go ahead and start. Is there anything I should say about this? Do you want to describe the
Yeah, I can
Where
just
we
say
are,
a couple
yes.
of words about the process so people understand how that works. Phil described the basic process. The Planning Commission is the entity in town that does the lion's share of the work with these sorts of proposals for zoning regulations and the official map. But the Select Board is the board that makes the ultimate decision. And these public hearings are important because it's an opportunity for members of the community to say, this is a dumb idea, this is a great idea, this would be a great idea if you change this, I have a concern about X, I have a question, that sort of thing. And it's meant to be an iterative process so that we can make adjustments and refinements to reflect your feedback along the way. So the Select Board is not required to act tonight. It's required to hear you and then make a decision as to whether the hearing should be continued or whether maybe more discussion is needed and another hearing held. So those options are still on the table. Technically, the select board also has the option to say, we don't want to make the decision on this, we want to send this to the voters and have a townwide vote on these changes. Typically, in Hinesburg, we haven't done that, but that is an option. And then finally, if the select board does take action to adopt these changes, there is a petition process by which community members can get an adequate number of signatures on a petition to compel a townwide vote. And we have had that happen a couple of times in our recent history for regulation changes. So procedurally, just know that we're at the end of a long process, but this is still your opportunity to comment and potentially make more positive changes. And that there are those sort of follow-on options for the select board to act and for the community to petition for townwide vote and that sort of thing. What's happening is, or what's being discussed, I think most of the faces that I see in the room were here for the planning commission hearing or commented on it, so I bet most of you understand what's happening, but we have an official map, and an official map is something we first adopted in 2009 to, in conjunction with a very large zoning change that expanded our village growth area and expanded the areas that we would allow more mixed use and dense development. And that official map was adopted at the same time to indicate where we wanted to see future public facilities. So future sidewalks, roads, parks, and the like. We haven't updated that map since it was first adopted in 2009. This would be the first update, so there are several items that are sorely in need of being updated. Planned facilities that didn't happen, facilities that did happen, but in a different location from when from what we originally thought. But the map goes beyond that and seeks to add additional facilities that weren't on the original map after the Planning Commission went through its discussions, and to provide a lot, hopefully a lot greater clarity for all of the facilities, the future public facilities that are shown on the map. So if you have a map or you're looking at the one on screen, you'll notice that most of the facilities are numbered. And there's now a proposed companion document that includes descriptions of each of those facilities. In many cases, how large they are, what the proposed uses are, to try to be clear about what the intent is for these potential future public facilities. So without going into too much more detail about how the official map works, which I'm happy to do if there's questions, that's the official map proposal. It's a revision to the one we first adopted in 2009. Now, I think most of the comments are gonna be about that. They certainly were at the Planning Commission public hearing. There is a whole nother regulatory change that's proposed and is part of this public hearing tonight, and that is a proposed change to the zoning regulations. Phil misspoke a little bit. They are separate regulatory documents. The official map exists outside of the zoning regulations and has the power of a zoning regulation. The zoning regulations are their own document. So there is also a change proposed to the zoning regulations, and that is a new section that's proposed within the village growth area design standards to be more specific about how much public open space needs to be built within larger developments. And so there are several pages that describe a formula for calculating that and give clearer design standards so developers understand what we're looking for in these public open spaces. And then actually does speak to the interplay between the official map and the zoning regulations on this front, because they are related even though they're independent. So those are the two regulatory changes that are proposed that this public hearing is all about.
And so the select board has had a couple of meetings about this, 2 or 3 anyways. And in our packet, which is made public, we've had recently a whole slurry of comments, maybe 5 comments just in the last day and a couple of comments in the last couple of days that the select board has received, and it's in our packet.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize those because some of those people said they couldn't be
Right.
here tonight. So, so if you let me do that briefly.
Sure.
Valerie Ducharme, who lives on CDU Road, commented about the desire for some amount of screening for the proposed trail that's not proposed on her property, but proposed on adjacent property to hers. the property that was formerly the Quinn property on the west side of Mechanicsville Road, but is now owned by Jim Donovan and Patty O'Donnell. So they have been involved in getting feedback about this proposed trail on their property, but Valerie indicated they're interested in seeing some amount of screening to preserve their privacy on their property should that trail ever happen. So that was one written comment.
And it would be fair to say, if that trail was to happen, that opportunity to have that discussion would be there. That wouldn't be something we would put on the map.
Right,
Yeah.
yes, that
That's a
level of
detail.
specificity about how it would be created, isn't something that's in the map, but it's worth noting that the concern was raised, and perhaps if that trail were to happen, we would have an institutional memory of that and be able to address it at that time. Beyond Valerie's comment, Alice Winterbottom is a landowner along the Richmond Road corridor. She lives on Mountain Spring Court, which is off of Birchwood. And her property is accessed from Mountain Spring Court, but she has frontage on Richmond Road, the north side of Richmond Road. And one of the big changes to the official map is to show the Richmond Road corridor and show a potential future sidewalk on the north side that we did a study of 3 years ago in 2016. So anyways, her comment had to do with wondering how close the sidewalk would be to her well, and whether there would be impacts to her well from runoff and salt application, and furthermore, what the impact would be to the future sale value of her property, given that she has several rights-of-way that already exist on her property for the road and utilities and rights-of-way and that sort of thing. So her comment was in part question and also, should I be concerned? So just want to note that for the record. And then we received more extensive comments from Dawn Francis. I don't know if Dawn's here. She said she wasn't
No,
going to be
she
able to
wasn't
be here. And Dawn Francis's comments are very similar to the comments she made at the Planning Commission phase with regard to facility number 34 on the map, which is frequently we refer to as Lot 15 on Commerce Street. And her comments, which are in your packet, I won't read them all, but essentially she's saying the community facility shown, number 34, on that lot ought to be removed in its entirety, so that the bulk, or at least, I guess what she's saying is so that the entire lot can be used for its
Commercial.
maximum commercial use. And she lays out her rationale for that in the letter. And then finally, Andrea, who I saw in the doorway and is here tonight, so I won't read her comments, submitted written feedback about the future roads and other infrastructure, future public infrastructure that the map shows on the west side of 116 within a flood hazard area, and cautioning that might not be such a good idea. We ought to reconsider that. So
Okay?
those are the four written comments
And
that we
there
received.
are more that came in.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's,
those are the ones that I
Yeah.
received as of today, this morning.
So Ann and Aiden Thomas also provided a letter, again, about Lot 15, and that they were very much opposed to dividing it up, that it should remain a commercial lot. And Sue McGuire here, same thing, about Lot 15 and keeping it as a commercial lot. So,
okay?
I would like to note that the planning commission process was also iterative. There was an informal sort of information gathering, and then there was the formal public hearing in March of this year. We received 31 written comments in that informal fall of 2018 work. We received comments from 18 people in writing for that March 27th public hearing. We had about 25 people attend that hearing and make comments at the hearing as well. So there was substantial comment there. All of that I can make available to you, but it's important to note that the Planning Commission spent 4 meetings after that March 27th meeting trying to address each and every comment that was made. They didn't change the proposal based on each and every comment, but they did make 3 major changes to the proposal. One was to eliminate a proposed sidewalk on the east side of Mechanicsville Road. a whole bunch of people from that neighborhood came and explained why that was probably not a good idea, and that there might be better ways to facilitate pedestrian access there, and the commission agreed and made that change. There was a future trail segment that was previously shown in the planning commission proposal on the Bloomin property, which is near the Silver Street 116 intersection, sort of but on the south side of the Platte River.
Yeah.
That was also removed after conversation between the landowner and the Trails Committee, and acknowledging that there are other ways to provide access there through existing sidewalks and easements. And then finally, the one that drove most of the conversation at these previous hearings was related to facility number 34 on lot 15. And in that case, the planning commission shrunk what was previously indicated as the entire parcel for a future community facility or park to the eastern half alongside the existing sidewalk, encompassing the bulk of the wetlands of that site. So those were the major changes that were made as a result of that public hearing in March. Several other more minor changes were also made.
Okay.
And also, one last thing, you as a select board made very few changes to the proposal the planning commission forwarded. So on the official map, we corrected an error on the sidewalk location. You added some language regarding the 116 Mechanicsville Road intersection, indicating the desire to reduce speed there. And you clarified some language about a box culvert that would be necessary to cross Patrick Brook north to provide access between the Kinney Drugs area and the areas north of that. And in the zoning regulation proposal, again, you made very few changes. Clarified some off-site allowances regarding the ability to satisfy the requirement by
Right.
making improvements on public property, not just private.
I
And
think
clarified how many open space amenities you would need
Right.
to accommodate or.
Descriptions
or-
of better, improve the descriptions
Yeah,
of
a
those.
little more specificity.
Yeah. All right. Does anybody on the board have any comments they want to make before we get started and open it up to the public?
I'd rather hear the public.
Yeah, okay. All right, so we're here to hear your comments. If anybody has any? Yes, Andrea?
Hi.
And just a reminder to address your comments to the
Yes.
board rather than individuals.
Yep.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would like to speak. I sent my letter, but I'd like to begin by asking us to remember the floods that we had, the Halloween storm, and how much of the village was flooded, and the fact that there was very little impact to our infrastructure from that flooding. And I think that represents a long history of people recognizing that we don't develop in the floodplain or the wetlands, that our prior generations didn't do it, and they've developed on the west side and on the higher and drier ground. And ever since the adoption of the official map in 2009, and even prior to that, on the suggestion of creating a road to the west and crossing Patrick Brook and potentially the canal, I have felt like we have not made good justification for why that road is needed. And that by including it on the official map, which is what I say in my letter, we are encouraging development in the floodplain. We're saying, yes, we can do it. It's engineered possible. And I don't doubt that it is. But as we've seen here in Hinesburg, in Vermont, and all across the country, in the end, the water does win out. And we have the opportunity here to work with the land and with the water to preserve our wetlands and our floodplain, to do exactly what they do that protects our other built infrastructure in good places. So why we have zoned and gone to great lengths with all kinds of conditions of how you can build in the floodplain, when our town plan really says, and most state and guidelines say, prevent that risk by not building in the floodplain. So I would really encourage us all to think about what we're saying when we are making a map that shows this road that goes through the floodplain, that then a developer is gonna come in and say, well, you're putting this road in, of course I can develop in here, and I will put in X number of feet to raise all these buildings above the flood elevation. What we know is that climate change is increasing the frequency and the intensity of storms. And so we're gonna see more storms like what we saw on Halloween. So I think that this is an opportunity for us to really go back and think more holistically about the green infrastructure that we have in this town and how we can really develop the higher and drier grounds more effectively if we leave our existing floodplains and wetlands to do what they do for us naturally. And so there's many places along the La Platte and Patrick Brook that could be shown on the official map that we recognize green infrastructure. We're recognizing all this built infrastructure. Let's recognize the function that the green infrastructure is providing to us today. So I would really encourage you to read my letter, to think about it, and maybe to go back to the beginning at the Planning Commission and think about this more holistically and include green infrastructure as part of the official map process. I'd also like to speak on the Richmond Road sidewalk, that I fully support the idea of putting a sidewalk up Richmond Road and understand that the original scoping study identified the north side of the road. That was based on, some conceptual engineering, understanding what's going on, and the criteria that needs to be met if we get federal funding to do that. I would say that putting too much specificity on that official map of saying that it's on the north side, I would rather see us making a wider line the way in which sometimes the roads are shown, that it's a corridor. We want a pedestrian corridor along Richmond Road so that we can have access up there. That's about it.
Anyone else? Yes,
I'm
and you should recognize who you are, just so we know.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
Sue McGuire, and I
Yeah.
did write a note, but I wanted to make another point about Lot 15 and the idea of turning part of that into a park. First of all, I don't think anything to do with that property being designated a park has anything to do with being pro-park. I think it's all having to do with anti-business in a commercial park and not having to do with it being a park. But if the town really wants it so bad as a park, why don't they just buy it? Buy it at a commercial rate. The problem is that the town turned down buying that piece of property. If you're not gonna buy it, then what you're choosing to do is to first devalue the property by putting it that only can be used for commercial use. Then after you've devalued it, anybody that uses any piece of that property has to turn part of it into a park themselves, which is pure extortion, making them do something with it. So all that's doing is being anti-business for that property, and it's not at all making it pro-park because the park is wanted. That's all.
Yes.
I just had a question
Bob,
regarding,
you should say.
about people. I just had a question regarding lot 15 and whether or not, has there been any changes in terms of the size of structure that could be put on that lot now? That Hannaford's is bowed out? Or is that still open for another 36,000 square foot commercial building or retail building?
I would say the zoning hasn't changed there as far as the size of the building would be restricted based on the size of the lot and setbacks and impervious surface and other things that would limit
So
any
it's
size.
conceivable that we could have another struggle over a big building going in there.
I think another,
Another large building could be proposed there. How
Yeah.
much struggle we would have over that application would depend on the application. But yeah, I think that the Hannaford process illuminated some better information about the wetland delineation and the soil types and the like But it didn't do anything to change our zoning regulations, so what we have is what's in the regs, and it's, another proposal could be made, and it could be a large building, yes.
So, Mary
Yes.
Crane, so a question about the zoning, because I know that you just mentioned that it's possible that in this official map area that it sounds like we make suggestions, but there are potentially zoning regulations that could change. Is that correct?
I
In the
suppose that any-
future? For, and whether lot 15, whether the zoning could go back to whatever the rest of the zoning is in that area. It was the only place in the town where you could put that larger building. Everything else was zoned at 20,000 square feet. So that, to me, for that lot, certainly would be potentially, if the largest piece, due to the fact that it is as wet as it is, and it does act as a good, I don't know, place to sop up a bunch of water when it rains, that would really make sense. I mean, you know, whether it becomes a park, whether the town can afford to buy it, or somebody can buy part of that piece to make a park, it, to me, just doesn't make sense to build a building that large there. And the only way to make us not go through all of this again is to change the zoning regs on that piece of property to, at a minimum, you know, make it 20,000 square feet, which is, it is everywhere else. I'm not necessarily saying it's gonna all anti, you know, business, but we can't have one giant building there and parking lot, because that was not gonna work.
Bill Marks. I'd just like to kind of express my understanding of what happened, since we're talking about Lot 15, and my understanding is that the issues, the big issues had nothing to do with local zoning. They were the state issues, primarily stormwater, and certainly something of the traffic, but we have no control over the state stormwater regulations. I mean, and they're going to change as they've changed recently. They're not going to get more liberal, as Andrea pointed out. We're heading for more extreme weather events, more frequent ones. And so I think, I don't know the details of the proposal for the changes in official map. I do understand what I've read, that there is a compromise, that the wetland area has been set aside, and the other section is allowing for smaller businesses. And I think this simply reflects the reality of what will be permissible. And I think it's a realistic attempt by the town to give people, everyone, notice of what is simply can be done. I don't think there's going to be another attempt to put a huge retail store in that lot. And it certainly didn't come, Hannaford's bowing out, did not come from lack of resources. It was clearly, they realized the handwriting on the wall, and it just was not a winning proposition. And that's not going to, it's not going to get any easier for that kind of a development. In fact, I think the door is closed on that. So I think the new zoning should reflect the realities and give us all notice of what really can be.
Philip, Mike, this
Yes,
is.
hi.
So I'm listening to Bill. Help me understand the process with the town map, the official map better. If you designate this as a park, is there a timeline already in place to purchase this land that you're setting aside for a park? I mean, it's basically you're making it unusable. And I'm wondering what is in the process. Are you gonna continue to charge taxes for this? I mean, you're basically saying this, you can't use this land, period, it's ours. So help me understand how the official map plays into this.
I'm not going to argue one way or the other. I wouldn't describe it as, you know, saying this is ours. And we've never had a time frame of when the town would purchase anything that's shown as public. It's only designated as seen as a value as potential public space. I mean, I think Hannaford's moved forward with it as designated as public space and came up with accommodations, I think, around it. So, and, you know, again, I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just sort of saying if somebody was to come and develop this, they would, if it was to move forward, they would look at that and say, we've got to somehow incorporate some public space along that walkway and along that wet area. And I think that would be something, you know,
Well, that's why I'm
brought
asking for a
through the
better definition.
DRB process.
That's why I'm asking for a better definition, because I'm not sure that's right. We have limited, and I agree with you, we don't know. Can we find out somehow? Because I don't understand that part of it, to be honest with you.
Maybe Alex could explain how the
yeah,
official map works.
sure.
Yeah, Mike, the official map process, although it's not widely used throughout the state, it is and has been used, and it is largely, as Phil described, what it essentially does is say you must make room for the public facility that's shown on the map. It doesn't mean you have to build it. It doesn't mean that the town has to buy it from you. It means that you have to accommodate it such that your development doesn't make what could be a public facility in that space someday impossible. And as we saw in the Hannaford process, there is a protocol where if a development is denied because the Development Review Board says you have not accommodated the official map, there is a defined time horizon within which the town has to put its money where its mouth is.
So back to the extortion.
No,
I'm
it's-
sorry,
it's-
I'm going to interrupt because we'll let people talk one at a time. Go ahead, Alex.
It's just laid out in statute that is, that's the process, so that's how it works, and, there is a defined process for it with a time horizon that forces the town to take some action or to allow the project to be reviewed without any reference to that official map element. One final thing, the planning commission did in its memo to the select board recommend that we start in our capital improvement plan, planning for these public facilities that are shown on this official map. They recognize that this is a visionary document that looks out at what Hinesburg's village area might be, 20 years from now, 50 years from now, and acknowledges that we're not in a position to purchase all of this property up front, but we should at least start putting some money aside to be ready to make the first steps in that regard. So that, we're showing that we have some resolve and that we are in fact planning beyond just a piece of paper. So I agree with you in the sense that there's some financial planning that should come with this, but what's being proposed is a regulatory document that then needs to be backed up by those other kinds of actions.
Phil, can I add something for a second, just to follow up on
Yes,
what Alex
sure.
said? This board has actually been through that official map process twice. And both times, the town turned down the opportunity to purchase the lot 15.
Well, once, in the original DRB review, the board felt that Hannaford adequately accommodated the official map and did not deny the project. It approved the project, including the official map accommodation. It was in the second go-around that they denied the project, and that was one of the bases, was the lack of accommodation.
I think there were some changes made by the developer a little bit that, that the second go-around it was denied. The first go-around, it was, while it didn't exactly meet what was shown on the map, their accommodation of a farmer's market or whatever had, the DRB felt was adequate to meet the requirements.
If I'm not mistaken.
Peter, you should say who you are.
I'm sorry, Peter, and Alex, correct me if I'm wrong, please, but it seems to me that the official map on lot 15 is not a taking as of yet at all. And the Giroux can come back and propose to use the whole lot. They would go through the process, and at the end of the process, if at the very end, the town may be forced to put up or shut up. But it's not a donation, and it would go through that process. If the town decided to not buy it, then it's Giroux to do whatever they want with it. And if the town decides to buy it, they have to buy it at fair market, which can be discussed and thrown around and everything. But that piece doesn't exist until an application comes for that whole piece of property. And then it's going to be whatever happens there. Am I wrong about that?
No, I think that's essentially right, but I think it's also fair to say that the town doesn't always have to be in purely a reactive position. We can
No, I
plan
understand that,
for the
yes.
potential acquisition of these places and prioritize which ones we want to, work with landowners ahead of time on. And that's one of the
No,
things
I
that
think
the
that absolutely
planning
should happen,
commission was
but I'm just saying
recommending.
it has
yeah.
not yet been a taking, and it isn't,
No,
there
and
should be compensation for
I
it.
think the reason that the statute specifically says that the official map process is not a taking, the statute says as much, is because there is that put up or shut up provision that says that if you're gonna deny the project because of it, you have to institute proceedings to acquire it. And if you don't, then you're done. That can't be held against the development proposal. It's very much like a first option of refusal.
Yeah, Mary Jo Brace. How many times do we have to go through this? It's been discussed, a decision was made, and yet Lot 15 is still on the official map. I realize it's been modified, but you're talking half of the lot. It will severely limit the type of business opportunities the town could reap and affect future revenues and jobs for the town. Not to mention the devaluation to the landowners. Who's gonna compensate for that? I keep reading bandstand. Everybody wants a bandstand. My opinion, we have a perfectly placed bandstand at the school. It's an established concert area and has been used there for years. Who's gonna maintain this park? The town does not have the resources to build and upkeep a park. Bissonnette's Field was built almost solely on donations, fundraising, bottle return money. It's taken 4 years with a lot of donated time and energy. The park area behind the police station is yet to go anywhere. We don't need two parks across the road from each other, especially not one in a commercial development with vehicles coming and going. The Quinn land, number 36 on your map, has an area designated for park and playground. That's a quarter of a mile down the road and is much better location since it'll be in an area with children nearby. How many playgrounds and fields do we need in a short distance? We also have the school, behind Lampman's, behind the town hall, the United Church, Japrags Parks, and Bissonnette Fields with a proposed future playground area. Lot 15 already has a sidewalk and benches for town use. Lastly, I see no need for the town to designate and section out land on Lot 15 for wetland. The state permit processes will deal with the wetland. So why tie that into the town use land and leave less that can be sellable and usable? Lot 15 should not be on the town map for town use. It's not a housing development, it's one lot in a commercial park.
Thank you.
Sue McGuire again, back to Alex's point of you don't have to make a decision to buy it until someone proposes it. The problem is they can't propose use of it without putting it in, or if they're gonna get all kinds of hassle. So it's gonna devalue what they can do when they know they have to make that part into a park. So again, it's devaluing the process and pushing them into doing something with it, which is the only way that they can buy the land. So to me, that's unconscionable. It's money, so if you want it, buy it. Put your money where your mouth is.
All right.
So, to answer that question, in a sense, could that be, if that was the case and that the town, in a sense, wanted to vote? And you put out that little section or however much, what is the actual acreage compared in that part? Is that the little picture of what you want to preserve for a park or whatever, whether it's water conservation or whatever it ends up becoming? And so how many acres out of it?
It's about 2.2,
2.8.
it's about half, it's about half the
It's about
lot.
half of the acreage. So, so would that, at a point, make sense to put it to the town and say, put it on a vote and say, are people interested in the town purchasing this piece of property, so that this becomes an official map, and therefore everybody else can move on with whatever other development is gonna happen. To simplify I don't know, I mean, you're right in the sense that it does become in this area of whether, is this gonna be this or isn't it gonna be this, and,
It devalues the whole thing.
I mean, this is asked of lots of businesses that they have to conform to regulations that towns expect. The question is, does it help the Giroux selling their property, does it help everybody sort of move forward to figure this out, I guess?
So when I look at this, it seems like lot 15 obviously,
Can I be an
sorry,
interest?
John Little.
Yeah.
Lot 15 obviously seems, no one has like a 100% this will be perfect for everyone and we'll love it. But when we talk about the new zoning that you guys were talking about, saying that based on building size that you put in, you know, you have to put in green space. So it's like, couldn't we just take this off the official map and know that a building that goes in there is going to follow by the zoning regulations you guys are talking about changing, and there will be green space? Because anyone that builds a non-residential space in town will have to do that. It seems like with this, it's saying, if you want to do it here, 50% of the lot has to be green space versus any other commercial place that you went and put a lot that is not 50% of the size of the lot.
So clarification, Alex, if with lot 15 shown, or 34 on this map, and let's say another Hannaford's came in with the new zoning regulations, what would the green space requirement be?
Good question. Let me look at what that zoning proposal is. I'm so happy you're talking about the zoning proposal, because we spent so much time talking about the official map, but there's this whole other thing that John's very astute to point out. So that requirement for new non-residential businesses to actually build some amount of public space kicks in at 6,000 square feet of building area. So if it were
30,000.
If it were 30, or the
max.
Hannaford side, 36,000, it would, the minimum amount of public space would be 15% of the building size. So somebody help me with the math, but 10% of 36,000 is 3,600,
Right.
and half of that is
45,
1,800.
so 45,
Yeah, thereabouts, that's about how much
5,000
public
square
open
feet,
space
yeah.
would have to be built. You know, not just set aside as a grassy green area, but installation of benches or some other features that would make it a place people would wanna come to. So 4,500 square feet or so, it's a good question, because this area shown on the screen, 34, is about 2.2 acres. That's vastly bigger than 4,500 square feet, right? So
Right.
2.2 acres is somewhere in the neighborhood of 80, yeah, almost 90,000 square feet. So vastly bigger. But most of what's shown on this map, under number 34, are the wetland areas that everyone not everyone, the planning commission was assuming wouldn't see a whole lot of development. It would see preservation. So I think the better question would be, how much of lot 34 is actually buildable space, and how does that compare to the 4,500 that would be required anyways? And that I'd have to calculate, I don't know, John. It's really in the corner, in this map, the upper right-hand corner of number 34, adjacent to the post office,
Right.
is the area that's not constrained by wetlands, and the area that the Lot 15 committee way back in 2011 said could potentially have some developed park space.
So that's a good question, though.
And we could figure that out.
Clarify that, yeah.
We can figure that out.
Go ahead, Al.
It's possible that if a development proposal came in Some, and probably a lot of the area for lot 34 is not gonna be buildable. If you take it out from the official map, it appears to me that Giroux just have to suck up that loss, because it's a taking by the state, because it's wetlands, and there's no compensation for that. If it remains on the official map, they may well get compensated. They may well lose money, and I'm not a good businessman.
Is everyone
but it's
able to
something
hear?
think about.
Hear that? So maybe could you say it louder? I think what you're saying, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what you're saying is, I think because of state regulations around wetlands and whatnot, if this came off the town map, then the property owner, the Giroux, would then have this lot to sell, but in fact, a portion of it probably wouldn't be built on, particularly with, as Bill said, you know, it's harder to build on this now with new regulations and everything that's happening. It probably would be hard to repeat what Hannaford's was trying to do, so that a portion of the property now becomes unusable. And if instead it stayed on the town map, then potentially the town would be up for providing some value for it. I think that's what you were saying.
Let me just apologize. I turned my hearing aids up so I can hear you. It makes my voice sound very loud, and I don't speak loudly enough. I'm sorry.
Can I just chime in a sec?
Yes,
I
please.
think there's different classifications of wetlands. This is not a mapped or considered a critical wetland, to my knowledge, which is why it went through the process the way it did. There are, Andrea would agree, I'm sure, that there's different classifications of wetland.
Right, but it.
It's still a wetland, but in terms of the state rules, it's not a critical wetland. So
Correct.
let's just separate the two.
But I think the point that, and Kirby, I think the point that Phil was making, or what they were saying, was the regulations that were in place when Hannaford went in and that they were adhered to through the courts, they're different now. The state regulations are different now on stormwater and things like that, that would make that unusable, whereas before it would be fine
Well,
to fill it.
I'm not
I think that's
convinced that's the
the
case.
difference between then and now.
Regulations changed in 2017.
Right.
They did.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
I just had a quick question. I don't, is that lot 34 for sale at this point? That's just.
Yes.
one.
Hannaford's pulled out, so yes.
Yes, it's for sale.
Okay, lot, the 34 portion is for sale.
It's one lot.
subdivided,
It's not
subdivided. It's
It's
still
lot
one
15,
lot.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
could that
So
say,
lot, wait, one lot, the little thing that says lot 44, is that different than the whole lot 15? That's just a little section?
That's just a number put to that section of the map.
Right.
It's detail number 34.
Which exactly means again?
So facility number 34 is described in that companion document. It's just a portion of the overall lot. It's the orange portion.
Right,
So the overall lot is what you see in gray.
yep,
It's what we call lot 15.
right.
And that's over 4 acres. And what's being proposed for a community facility is just a portion of it.
That's what
Number
lot, that's what
34.
the lot for 30, okay.
Right.
It's not
There you
lot
go.
30.
so,
Right.
so my question is.
Feature 34.
So that parcel 34 could be bought, say by a private entity or a group, and they'd have to pay taxes on it, of course, but it could be donated to the town possibly,
If it was
right?
subdivided, sure. I mean, it's all
But
one
it
lot
could be
right now.
donated to the town under the stipulation that it would be green space, period.
I suppose that's a
sure.
possibility.
Okay, just one.
Yeah.
A lot of ifs there, but yeah. A lot of ifs there.
Yeah,
But,
well,
yeah.
Any other
it's if-
comments?
I just want to say, I just think it's silly for the town to make a commercial lot into a park. I mean, it's already been through all the planning for years, where it has all the infrastructure, it's got the sidewalks, it's got the electricity, it's got everything you need for a commercial lot. So why put it back into public use? I just don't see a need. I just think it's silly to make that into a public park. We got plenty of parks in town. And actually, there's 3 other places for the park. You put one up at Triple L, North Road, and Birchwood Drive. I think would be better places for a park. So I think it's silly for a town to have this land like somebody saying, you got parks all the way around it, and the 3 other places I just mentioned, it's kind of silly to put a park there in a commercial area. Because if I had a child, I wouldn't want him walking around in a place where there's all businesses around there.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay. As citizen, and I'm sure there were a lot of other people who attended the meeting where the eminent domain situation was done. Now, everyone had a chance to look at this and come to the meeting and say their piece and all, but I do believe that there were many people who walked out of there thinking this was a done deal, it was off the official map as far as green space, and they didn't have to think about it again. So, I just wanted to say there, you know, and granted, everybody had a chance to look at this and read it and come and say their piece, but I do believe a lot of people felt that this was no longer gonna be an issue.
After the fact that the town chose not to take it
Take
by
it as a-
eminent domain. Marilee?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I would like to reiterate what Peter said, because my understanding is the reason that this lot is still for sale is in the history of it being available, it's been really difficult. There have been real problems with building on it because of the soil. And when Hannaford's thought it had solved those problems of building, it still had to deal with the stormwater. And according to Mitch Sipes, their plan for stormwater would not have even passed the 2002 regulations, let alone the more modern ones. So that's going to continue to be an issue, no matter who decides to buy it. So in a way, this is a benefit to the Giroux Trust. I can understand that it's also problematical for the town to be dictating that, but I just think that it's something to consider. This is a piece of land that, because it's so wet and because the soil is so clayey, it's been very difficult to find anybody who wants to buy it and build on it. So in a way, it's a benefit to the owners to have the town say, well, in the future, we would like to take it on as a public wetlands or public space and kind of lift that pressure off.
Well, I mean, I think the problem is that it could stay like that for 20 years, right? I mean, if the town doesn't have a time limit to take it over.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it isn't really a benefit to the Giroux family.
Oh, because they might not ever get paid.
Right. Right. I mean, you could argue that if it's on there and it never gets sold, it remains green space. So, yes.
Steve Giroux.
Yeah.
I agree with what you're saying. I disagree with what she's saying. Is that, you know, to put half of this lot into the official map, it just more limits the potential uses for it. And it sounds like, you know, I agree with what she's saying. There's a lot of other potential problems with it or other limitations. So to compound it more by adding this to it is just basically making the lot unsellable because it limits where people can put stuff and what they might want to do. And between the zoning and the state and the wetland stuff, it seems like all those concerns are pretty much taken care of already. We shouldn't have to have it on the official map to say we need to do this to save the land. All those other limitations are going to take care of that, and all the other regulations with the state and the towns should follow through and do their thing at the time it might be coming up for a development proposal. You know, none of the other lots on the official map are taking up 40 or 50% of the lot. It's just a corridor here or a trail here or a small playground. This is the only one that takes up this such percentage of the lot that it limits its use even more than all the other limitations it already has.
Yes.
Okay, Ed Dwyer. And I just want to make a point to Alex about this. The map process seems to have a lot of value in terms of future planning. But when you go back to the previous discussions about this property, and then the attempt to use eminent domain to stop Hannaford's, and the failure to get the eminent domain, it looks like the map process is being used as a backdoor to a lot of people. I'm not the only one who thinks that. And I don't think it's a good idea as a town, regardless of what happens with this property, that you politicize a tool in that way that provides value to how we plan for the town going forward and has provided value in the past. It's almost like, you're using a hammer for everything, and we're distorting the purpose of the map, because, or at least we're politicizing it. I won't say we're distorting it. We're politicizing it by using it in this way. And that's just something to throw in there as we go forward and think over the long term. You don't want people thinking, okay, this mapping process is another way, it's another zoning process from a different direction. Okay? We just need to be careful about that.
Thanks. Go ahead.
Oh, John Littleson. Is there any way just to like have the town vote specifically on having lot 15 on or off the official map? Just that one lot. Say everything else looks really good because no one else has talked about it yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But obviously this one seems to keep coming back
Yeah.
over and over and over again, and everyone's got lots of opinions about it.
Alex, that would be a technical question.
We had to go out and get some
And the only reason you're
signatures.
here is the answer to this
Right,
technical
so
question.
the short answer is no, at least not as this proposed change to the official map was constructed. It's an all or nothing deal. The select board has the power to kick it back to the planning commission and say, make it a different proposal. They actually have the power to change it, to make it a different proposal themselves. But in order, and they have the power to send it to the voters to make that vote.
But it would have to be what was warned at this meeting,
Well, it
and
would
that
have
this
to
is
be,
what
it would
was
have to be the
warned.
proposed changes, so if this were constructed in a manner that the only change to the official map was on Community Facility 34, Lot 15, then absolutely, that would be an easy thing to have a community-wide vote on. But because us planners are always thinking big and trying to get everything fixed at the same time, there are a lot of other moving parts in here that would be part of that vote. Trying to think if there was an innovative way that it could be separated out. The problem is that the existing official map doesn't show half of this parcel as a future community facility. It shows the whole parcel as a future community facility. So even if we punted on this parcel and said, well, let's just not deal with that with these revisions, the original map is more, has more than this one does. So it's hard for me to construct a scenario where we could get there. It's not to say we couldn't, but it would require us to revise this and maybe bring that forward as a separate standalone change.
So I'm just gonna ask a question just to keep us moving along. Unless anybody wants to come to executive board meeting at 11 o'clock tonight, no.
I'll go.
Are there any other comments? We can keep going, but are there any other comments outside of lot 15 or item 34 on the changes to the zoning, which are the green space, I think improved definition, and other significant features of the town map? Does anybody have any specific comments to give the board outside of lot 15?
I have a question on the sidewalk on this, from the school over at the Buck Hill. They're putting 4 drains in there across from Jacobs, and they're draining the water on our lawns. Why don't they put the water over in the ditch where it belongs?
So is that you back there, George?
Yeah.
So I can speak to that a little bit. So as a part of this sidewalk project that's shown on the official map as a future sidewalk from the school on the south side of 116 down towards Buck Hill Road, there's a proposed drainage improvements, including within the 116 right-of-way, that are still under review by the state. And so George and I have talked and with some of the other landowners about how we can reroute drainage to get it where it wants to be. And currently, some of that drainage comes across Mike Jacobs' property and then flows down Friendship Lane on the west side, which is George's side. And there's a swale on the other side, on the east side, that seems like it'd be better suited to receive that drainage. So this isn't really an official map issue, Jordan, in the sense that it's kind of a technical issue about the feature shown on the official map. And to be honest with you, I'm still haggling with V-Trans, the Agency of Transportation, about that. And it's been a difficult negotiation because they don't want to put in any more pipe than they have to, and they kind of want to leave it the way it is, which is not, I know, the way you'd like to see it left. But we're working on it.
Okay, because I knew you were supposed to get back to me and you never did.
Yeah, that's because I'm having a hard time getting the answer I want out of the V-Trans person that I'm talking to.
I think, you know, so since that's sort of off of the map, but a concern, if, you know, I think you could certainly bring it to the select board at some point. We have somebody who seems to have a little pull with V-Trans once in a while, but thank you. So again, anything else other than lot 15 or item 34 on the town map? All right, Andrea, did you have?
I just wanted to respond to the old, the 2009 map where it showed all of lot 15. And I think that previous map was very conceptual. The intention on all of the ways in which that map was created was that it was to put notice, to engage and have a conversation with the developer at the time that a proposal came in, which is still, I think, the intention of the state way the statute is written, is that it does, the official map does not have to have such exacting specificity, and that when it was put on as all of lot 15, it was not envisioned that the entire lot would be it. It was to trigger conversations with the developer, and or to, you know, the town could have approached the landowners to purchase the whole thing. But I think it's important on this map, and that's one thing that concerns me about this map in general, is that there is so much specificity of like whether the sidewalk's gonna be on the north side or the south side, when really we're talking about recognizing the importance of opportunities where we know that we would like to do something, and that the idea is to work with the landowner or the developer at the time when something is going to change there, or to put it in the capital budget because it is a high priority for the town to take some action in. So I think it's hard when we start seeing these things on the map, but I'd like to say that I would rather see less specificity on that map, and recognizing the intention of what we're trying to do by saying that we need infrastructure in the town, both green and built infrastructure.
Okay, I'm gonna bring it to the select board for comments or thoughts. And the idea would be whether we make a decision tonight, we push it off, you know, what are people, I guess, thinking from what they've heard?
All right, I'll go.
Go ahead.
So, I very much like the vast majority of the plan the planning commission came up with. The one exception, however, is lot 34. We need to keep in mind that when this map was created by the planning commission, the whole tussle with Hannaford was still ongoing. That just ended. And I was hoping that with the feedback from the community, lot 30, or number 34, would be totally removed. That was what I heard. 75% of the people I talked to, at least, or the correspondence we got, said, keep it a commercial park. Take it off the official map. I was concerned because it was still going on with Hannaford, and I don't like to bring this up, but I feel I must. A number of the people on the planning commission at the time were also members of RGH. In my opinion, it's a conflict of interest. So I take this lot, or number 34 still being on here as part of that fight. I can't separate the two. And I can't understand why this lot, of all the places in town, we would have a park or whatever else is listed in that particular location. It just makes no sense. It's not as though there's a lot of water flowing over that, as we saw on Halloween. There's places in town where we do get a lot of water. Let's protect those. This, you have the canal above it, you have ditches around it. It's not a lot of flow coming onto that area. And we could say that every parcel in town needs to be set aside for stormwater. But you can't do that. And this law, as Don Francis very well spelled out, is set up for commercial use. That's what the Planning Commission years ago set it up for. It may be difficult to build on it, but the Giros have been sitting on it for how many years? So my two suggestions are either take it back to the Planning Commission and remove number 34 completely from the map, or those who are so interested in buying it during the Hannaford time, pony up and pay the fair market value to the Giros. Negotiate with the Giros if it's that important, negotiate with them a fair market price, and purchase the property. Then we don't have to discuss this and have this raging debate nonstop. It's just not worth it to our town. It's not. So as it is right now, I will not vote in favor of the plan in total, which is unfortunate because I like the vast majority of it. But this is a real sticking point for me.
Okay. Anybody else?
So I have a couple of comments. So I heard a lot about this being, you know, the commercial commerce area in town. And while I agree years ago that was the idea, with the latest plan going into town, you can have commercial throughout the village. So it's not like this is the only place you can have commercial here. You can have light industrial up in the northwest where they're planning to build. You can have it in many areas of the village. So I just want to make that clear so people understand that it's not like you can only do it in this one location. I know it's contentious, and I like the idea that you have about maybe, you know, coming together to work with the Giroux family to find a solution to purchase the land if it's that important. Part of the other thing is a solution. A lot of what I've heard was that particular plan, the Hannaford plan, was the size of the building. So is it just a zoning change to make it like the rest of Commerce Park at 20,000 square feet and call it a day, and then whoever comes in, whether it's Hannaford or somebody else, the size issue is gone? You know what I mean? I don't know. From the people that I've talked to, it's not so much the company, it was the size of the building, right? So is that, I'm just trying to find a simple solution, just as I think Tom is in one way, right? Of how can we mitigate the whole thing? And as we've heard from the same planning commission that put this on the zoning regs way back when, they intended it all to be 20,000 square feet. They just thought because it was such wetland, nobody would build there, which clearly they were wrong. So I'm just, you know, I'm just trying to find a solution, so.
Okay, Marilee?
I like the idea of it being a public space, but I'm having a lot of trouble with the idea of the town having decided that kind of conceptually without buy-in from the landowners. This conflict between what the landowners want and the idea of the town map is a big problem for me. And the reason that it wasn't wet when we had the Halloween storm is because it's working as a wetland, according to Steve Revell, who's a renowned state hydrogeologist and did a lot of testing there. And I think that that's one of the reasons that the flooding happened and then it dissipated very quickly, because we have places like that lot that are working. But I'm kind of convinced by what Matt Giroux said, that that's what the state regulations are for. We have good stormwater regulations now in the state, and that was the big stumbling block for Hannaford. So they couldn't come up with a good stormwater plan. So that is my big concern about that lot. Whether it becomes a park or not is not so important to me, is that its function as a wetland is protected. And maybe that'll happen without it being designated as anything on the town map.
Aaron, did you wanna?
Yeah, so I think the planning commission did a great job overall with this. Like you were saying, Tom, there's a lot of great things in this, including Lot 15 here. You know, they did a great job because when we first saw this, this was all, you know, designated as public facility kind of a space. And to Andrea's point, there is too much specificity on here. And I would go so far as to say that even with this feature 34, that is too much specificity. And that we just went through the simple napkin math here of looking at, 8,000 square feet would have been the proposed amount of space needed to be put aside for a 36,000 square foot building. And yes, I think you're right. Maybe putting a 20,000 square foot building would be a possible scenario we might want to move forward with, which would make that even smaller. Remove the feature 34 and let the zoning play out as it should. So unfortunately, like you were saying, it's a binary thing. You either take it all or you throw it all out. This right here, it would stop me from supporting overall, which is unfortunate. But let's come up with a way to figure this out and get this one. I mean, this is all we're talking about here tonight, is get this one thing taken care of so we don't have to keep talking about it. It's too much to encumber half a property, with this restriction. And again, it's too specific, and let's just let the zoning laws play out as they should and adjust them if we need to.
Okay. So I always get to be last. I came here, before I came, I set the intention of trying to really listen. And I heard a number of things tonight, some that I already knew, but it was good to hear them reiterated. Obviously, I thought this would be a hot topic. I wasn't sure how many people would show up, but I'm not surprised. And just a couple of thoughts. I think what Bill Marks said is something I've been thinking about too, is I just don't believe this development, Hannaford's development, will be repeated in the same way. I mean, I just don't believe that if we, take off this feature 34, 2 weeks from now, somebody's going to come through with the same development and not address all of the issues that people in town said we wanted addressed, and there's a number of them. Just the way that it came to the town was sort of in the back door. It wasn't an open discussion to begin with, and since that point, it's been contentious, and it's really poisoned our community, I think, in a way. So I do think that another development coming through would need to address new stormwater regulations. They would see, here's how to get through the DRB and the town and to embrace what we're trying to do. So I think there's less concern about trying to tell them what to do. I think they would see the writing on the wall and try to adjust a little bit. That's my opinion. I don't see the town ever buying this property, really, realistically. Particularly now we're in budget season. It was been brought up before that while I believe there should be some green space a little bit everywhere, and this is a nice spot, the sidewalk goes by, the canal is there, and so having some green space and a buffer between this and whatever development might happen makes total sense. I think any developer is going to need to provide the town some level of accommodation, and it could be done along with whatever development happens. But I just don't see the town, ponying up any real money for this, again, in my opinion. And I've said, I think the green space requirements and the rest of all of this is really strong and, fully supported. And I did support, the reduction of the amount for Lot 15 when we were discussing it. And I think it's fair to say that I think it was brought up that the town map has become now, contentious, and it really doesn't have to be that way. I think I'm okay with maybe going back. I hate to do this to the planning commission, but going back and taking another look at that particular feature. And there may have been a couple of other small comments too. I think the development there in that commercial spot, I don't think we'll see another development like was proposed 10 years ago. I just don't see it happening. They'd be crazy to do it. And I think, they'd be, if they wanted to get their development through at the least amount of cost, they would find a way to meet our town expectations, I think.
So if this does go back to the planning commission, I would like them also to pay attention to Andrea's letter.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Because
Yep.
I was there in the ball field up
Yeah.
to my knees, where there usually isn't any water. And the reason, as I said before, that it worked so well in Hinesburg, we were flooded in the morning, and by afternoon, everything was fine, right? I wasn't here in the afternoon, but that's what I heard. Well, the next day, anyway, the levels had all gone down because we had the structures in place. So I want those structures to be protected and enhanced and not put anything in that's going to make it more difficult for huge amounts of water to flow through the town.
Yeah, I meant to say that Andrea's comments and letter, made me stop and think about, how did we miss something here? And I think putting on, buffered areas and wetlands. Is Andrea still here?
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Does make sense, so maybe we can incorporate that discussion into it. And,
Is there an ability to put an overlay of the floodplains? When looking at, if it goes back to look at it with the areas and take that into consideration?
I think we should be clear, this floodplain discussion has been had. Doesn't mean you can't have it again, doesn't mean that we didn't decide it wrongly the first
Right.
go-around, but it has been had in the past. If you want this to go back to the planning commission, the chair is right here and can speak to that. It can certainly go back to the planning commission. If the biggest change that needs to happen is based on reading your tea leaves, that community facility 34 either just comes off or becomes a little asterisk that says, to be determined, small scale XYZ, you can make that change. It does not need to go back to the planning commission to fix the community facility 34 issue. And frankly, this is a very ripe discussion. We've had very similar comments at multiple stages. So I think you as the policymakers could either direct the planning commission what you want to see happen with community facility 34, or just make that change. And like John was saying, get on with it, because everything else seems to not be driving the conversation. Andrea's point about whether the community facility 14, 15 are inappropriately driving development in a flood hazard zone, that's a bigger issue. And if you want the planning commission to talk through that again, absolutely send it back to them. Don't try to do that yourself. But if it's primarily the lot 15 facility number 34 issue, I'd encourage you to just make up your mind and act.
Fair enough.
So,
Can I just ask,
go ahead.
what's our timing on this? Because we do have, the clock is ticking.
So the planning commission public hearing was on March 27th of this year, and the statute says if you don't act within a year of that hearing, it's considered, the proposal's considered denied.
And acting would be?
To adopt it.
Okay.
So you could revise this, hold another public hearing, and then
Any
adopt.
revision would require another public
Correct.
hearing.
Correct, but you have that ability to do that before March 27th. If it's more than just number 34 and there are bigger issues at play, yeah, absolutely, kick it back to the planning commission. We'll just start that process again, not from scratch, but
Right.
I mean, I'd like to turn it down tonight, but I'd like to get it back as soon as we can. One more thing that Aaron brought to light a little bit was the specificity in some of the numbers, and how they seem to be different. Some seem like more a suggestion, and I'm just gonna use number 34 as an example. It says, park amenities to include walkways, gathering spaces, et cetera, et cetera. Is that saying it must include each one? Or is there a certain number of amenities that can be installed? The wording seems different on the different numbers.
So what we tried to do was reference other existing studies or plans as much as possible so that when a developer comes in, they don't say, I don't understand what you're talking about, and I'm afraid of that big bad DRB because they're gonna make up something, unless the regulations are very specific. So the specificity issue is about providing clarity, and in some of these facilities, we do have that clarity. And in others, it's less clear, and so that's why the language varies. And in some of them, we refer to specific reports and studies, and in others, it's a vision, and we haven't done the studies to fully back up the specificity.
So if I can just read this one sentence, tell me what it would mean. If I was a developer, I know how I would read it. Park amenities to include walkways, gathering spaces, playground, recreation, court space, open air theater, along with wetland preservation. Would that mean that a developer of that lot would have to include each one of those items?
If I were a developer reading that, I would assume that meant most, not all. So if I came to the town and said, here's my plan for your park, and I didn't put in an open air theater, but I did everything else, I would feel pretty good about that. And speaking as one of those planning and zoning bureaucrats upstairs, I would have that same reaction. Good job, you accomplished, the intent.
But the DRB could say, no, you didn't
Yeah.
put it in the theater.
They could,
That's-
and I can tell you that based on the DRB we have, that they would not, because because of just what happened on the Hannaford project.
Yeah.
That board was willing to accept a very different and interesting, trying to find neutral terms, but proposal that, didn't reflect some large park space. It was much more refined than that.
Yeah.
But I can't speak for the DRB.
Sure, sure.
I'm just telling you how we interpret it upstairs, and we help the DRB interpret what these regs mean.
So if I was to make a suggestion, I would say replace park amenities to include walkways, et cetera. Park amenities may or should include some mixture of these various things. Just to give a little bit of flexibility, because if I was to read this, my interpretation would be, you've got to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And I don't want that, like Aaron said, I don't want the DRB to have that level of confusion.
And I think that's the change we made to the zoning. We tried to clarify, are all of these things required for green space? Or is this suggesting what makes a good green space?
It's a balancing act.
Yeah.
Flexibility is something the planning commission talks about a lot, wanting to preserve that. At the same time, the courts have said, if you don't provide specificity in your regs, we will knock those regulations down because it therefore gives your regulatory bodies, the DRB, what's called unbridled discretion to make it up as they go along within the confines of a very generalized description. So it cuts both ways. We try to be as specific as possible without being onerous and without eliminating the chance to, have an interesting idea that the town didn't
But
think
does
of.
Tom's suggestion here put us in that unbalanced position?
I think
in your
in this
opinion?
case, if community facility 34 is coming off the map,
Doesn't
it's a
matter.
moot point.
Yeah.
That's the bigger question that
That's what I'm
I
thinking.
want you guys to answer.
Yeah.
So let's go around the room, Mary Lee. I think one proposal is to take 34 off, move forward with what we have.
Yes, I'm leaning toward taking 34 off. I love this town, and I love that people are so passionate about it, and so many people come out for something like this to tell the select board what they think, and I want to respect that. So I also think that that the wetlands, as I said before, I think that will be protected by the state regulations. But I still have questions about Andrea's wetlands, protecting the wetlands on the Patrick Brook area 14 and 15. So I don't want to just do that and then give it a blanket okay.
So if we're looking for it, I'll make a motion, to remove 34 off of this document, if that's what the board is looking for. But before I do, let's check in.
Yeah. So for me, somebody that lives in the village, right? And I was part of the planning commission, I'm not part of RGH. I always go to a livable, walkable village core. That's been our goal since I can't tell you how long. I think one thing we've learned about a size of that type of resale establishment with the amount of traffic and how we were going to change Mechanicsville, the truck traffic, all of that kind of goes counter to that. So I hear what you're saying about taking that off of the lot, and I'm sort of a give and take. I'm okay with it, but I would want to see the zoning regs go into that lot that match the rest of the lot, which was the original intent of the planning commission. It was a loophole. And we say, well, we think it's going to be okay, and people will talk, and that's how we came to that solution. And sure enough, somebody built on something that we thought there's no way they can build on it. So I'd like to see that lot 15, the zoning regs change so it's continuous throughout, because nothing else can be over 20,000 square feet. So I think that should be 20,000 square feet like everybody else, and then I'm okay with that going off.
Well, so the question is, the zoning, any zoning regulation change would take an awful lot of time. Yeah, I would think it would take some time to rezone. So the question is, do we move forward with this town map and the other zoning regs on green space? Do you want to do that and without that also included or not?
But that's not to say we couldn't go back and do that next.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm
It's
not
just
saying it could
it's just
be
sort
or
of a point
couldn't.
of order kind of a thing.
So how can we change the zoning without it? I mean, I figured the entire, so I know some of the zoning regs, right? So the industrial area, it is 20,000 square, it's max lot size. Why can't we just change the language to say nothing over 20,000 square feet in the commercial district?
Because that would take a process and a lot of
Yeah,
public
sure.
input.
Sure.
And it would, be past our March deadline, I would guess.
Well, it's a different
It's a different,
situation as well.
it's a different
Yeah.
thing altogether.
So you're tying it, that's fine, whatever you want.
I just want to find a middle ground solution. And the people that were against that plan, all I heard was size of building. All right, and there's issues with stormwater, and I get that, and I agree that that's probably taken care of with all the new state regulations, so I'm not concerned about the stormwater so much. Mine is more about finding the middle ground of how to ensure that that part of the village core stays in the size that the people that live in the village core want to see it be.
Well,
And we already have admitted it's an oversight.
if we go, it appears like it was an oversight, I'd agree with you. But if we were to go through with the zoning regulations, there would be a lot of public input as to whether they want to limit that lot size to that. I'm all right with it, but
But yeah,
it's a process.
That's the process, yeah.
That's the process.
It's a pretty clear process.
So,
but,
okay,
yeah.
so you want to hold off on it?
I would be happy to take it off. I think that's a good plan. I'd be in favor of taking it off.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion to remove facility 34, is that what it's called officially? Facility 34 from the proposed official map that's presented to us tonight.
Second.
Any more discussion on it?
Just a question for Alex. So this would still have to go back to the planning commission? No, this is,
No, this
okay.
is us.
You're making a motion now about a policy decision on one specific element. You're then gonna have to decide whether you wanna rewarn a public hearing with the new map without it, or whether you wanna just kick it back to the planning commission to discuss that and some of these other issues that Marilee mentioned, Jeff mentioned. So those are two different decision points. You're about to give very good clarity on facility number 34, I appreciate that.
You're gonna sleep well tonight.
But then we're gonna need clarity on whether you want this process to keep moving forward to the end with you, or you wanna kick it back.
In my preference, if we were to go forward with this, I would say we'd want to move forward. I would like to have the planning commission an opportunity to discuss that among themselves, of here's the change that the select board is making, and here are the couple of things that came up, and come back to the select board and give us your opinion, your, you know, on potentially Jeff's idea, 'cause is that something we could move forward on? What, you know, what would be the timing? Is that in your capacity? I'd also, you know, entertain more discussions with Andrea on her thoughts, but at this point, I could support moving forward with this.
How many public hearings would have to be held if they kick it back to the planning commission?
So the planning commission would be required to hold one, and then it would come back to the select board and they would have to hold one.
So, yeah, I'm not saying, you know, we go back there. I'm just saying, I would love to hear from the planning commission. If we're moving forward with this, you know, get your input, I guess, to.
So if it helps at all, statute compels the planning commission to issue a report.
There you go.
If you
That's
change
it.
the proposal. They
Okay.
did not issue a report for tonight because your
They're so
changes
minor.
were so
Yeah.
non-substantive.
Okay,
This
so-
would be a substantive change. We would have to take it up at the next meeting, I guess, and.
But are you going to vote on the proposal now without 34?
To move forward.
So, okay.
It would have to be, we'd have to have another public meeting, so,
Okay.
you know, it's not like we're voting, that's what we want. We're
Okay.
voting, let's move it forward.
Well, we
But
could
again,
put together have a conversation, put together a memo or something.
that would be helpful, I think, for me, just to, I don't wanna step on any, you know, step in any.
Timing wise, I think because of warning periods, you know, we're looking, if
Yeah,
you wanna continue moving these forward at the select board level,
Be in
even with
February.
additional input,
Yeah.
you're talking about a
Right.
public hearing, another public hearing in
Yeah, end of
February.
January,
Yeah.
after budget time, yeah, but there's still time, we could still do
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's clear, at this point, I don't expect anybody will come up with any outside problem. It really is all about this one issue. So we'll continue to get some public input, but, you know, it's really down to this one issue. Oh, sorry,
I
Andrea.
had a question, and maybe I stepped out of the room and I didn't hear this, is there a time limit on the existing 2009 map that there's no expiration?
No, it doesn't
So if you don't
expire.
adopt anything, that one still is in effect?
Right.
Okay.
Good question. So there's a motion to adjust the map, remove item 34, but no other changes to the map and no other changes to the zoning, green space zoning.
So what if I have a problem with the bridge over Patrick Brook that's on the road proposed?
The motion's not addressing that, so it stays the same.
So then I would vote against the motion because I want that to change? Okay, thank
If you
you.
wanted it, if you didn't want to move forward with it the way it is,
Okay,
you would vote no.
thank you.
I think what I would say, Marilee, is we've talked about this a lot. Planning Commission's worked on it a lot. We've addressed a lot of the difficulties. This is a new one, and I think it kind of falls under the category that you were just mentioning, that the stormwater rules and the, you know, how the designs, we're a ways away from having any kind of a bridge there. I think there's time to address that if it becomes necessary. I mean, that could start as early as tomorrow, but I think it'd be a shame to hold all this up for a new issue when there are other departments in the state that deal with such things.
I'd be interested to know what Andrea thinks about that.
I think it's not just the bridge. I know structurally and probably permit-wise, you can have a, you know, $10 million bridge across there. It's more conceptually that by putting and showing on the map that we are going to plan on investing in infrastructure in that area, we are telling private developers it's okay to develop in the floodplain. And they will meet the existing requirements. I just think that is poor planning on our part for thinking about future homeowners who will be dealing with the ramifications of kind of saying we think it's a good idea to develop. So it's not like they can get permits, they can do it, but the best way to avoid disaster is to prevent it and to not say, yeah, let's go build in the floodplain.
And I don't disagree with, you know, everyone's eyes are opening to what's happening. But I think that kind of a change is a very large change. and would take a lot of thought. And while we might not want to delay, it isn't, in my opinion, something all of a sudden we can just sort of address today. I think it's a big picture thing that's worth starting to think about and starting to take appropriate action. But again, I hate to hold this up.
Right. And I actually
myself.
think that there's good things in here regarding the other part of the plan, the green space requirements that would outweigh the concern over a bridge that will probably be, who knows how many years down the road.
Right, so the short term, the next few years, next 3 years,
Right.
there may be some benefit, and
Right.
this, you know, I think what Andrea is saying is this map is encouraging development in an area that maybe we should stop and rethink, but I think that stop and rethink is a big picture rethink.
Absolutely, and that's why we really need to do it.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Yes, go ahead.
Alan Norris.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know I had a chance to say something after it went to you guys, but
Oh,
apparently
yeah,
everybody
yeah.
else does. So I just say the way I heard what Alex said, and it may be wrong, if you guys vote today just to accept it as it is and remove 34, he doesn't have to warn anything. Is that true?
No.
No,
Yeah,
there would need to be at least one more public hearing for this board with
Just
the
this
new
board.
map without
Yeah.
number 34
Just
on
this
it.
board.
Just
okay.
this board, yeah.
That's all I wanted to clear up, because it seemed like you were
Unless we also
wishy-washy
kicked
about
it.
what it meant.
But we're gonna get a memo and input from them. Any last comments? Go ahead,
I
Bill.
just have a question on the proposed designation of the item 34 as a park, as I understand. And my question is, and it may be directed, I guess, to Alex, is there any reason it could not be designated as to what the science, the investigation at long cost, as many experts found it to be, and that is the critical wetland area, and simply designated as such rather than as a park? Is that in the official map, or is that not the function of the official?
Well, we don't have that type of community facility mapped already, but I haven't proposed wetland features in that way. However, we are proposing to add to this version of the map future community stormwater treatment areas, and so it wouldn't be beyond the pale to think of that in a similar sense. But, you know, Bill, with planning, anything's possible, but it all has to get through these people and these people. So it's just a matter of going through the process and making your case, and
It
then
seemed like that would be
somewhere
more
lands.
palatable, because it's a more direct way of describing what it is, rather than changing its nature, which is, you know, which
Ultimately-
is how it's perceived.
Ultimately, this map is about where we want future public facilities to be. So if we don't anticipate it to be a public facility, it doesn't need to be on the map. But if we do, then it could be.
So, just a point of clarification, you say public facilities, so if we were to remove item 34 and we relied on our village design area standards with the smaller footprint, that's not a public facility, that could just be, here's a lawn and here's some trees and just greenery and landscaping.
It would have to be accessible to the public, similar to privately owned areas where the
Okay.
public is welcomed in. But yeah, it wouldn't have to be publicly owned. It could be privately owned. A very small example of that is in the Kinney Drugs development area. There's a very small sort of seating area and trees, and then there's an area next to Blue Cottage where there's some benches and some landscaping. Those areas are not publicly owned, but they would count towards this zoning change that we're talking about, because they're developed public spaces. Are those the best examples of what we want? Maybe not,
So they could
but
put in
that,
a concrete-
but in
a
terms
concrete pad and a
of,
couple of
privately
benches.
owned spaces that the public is welcome to use, that's what we're talking about. It doesn't have to be in public ownership.
So, I'm torn, because I like the ideas of the landowners, it's their land, I get it, but I also know the village, the vision of the village there, and there are people that live down by there, believe it or not, one of them, and That's where the 4th of July parade ends. That's where a lot of things go on down there. I walk that road every day. It would be nice to see something happen other than a parking lot. So,
Well, they would have to meet the green space requirements that are in the zoning,
right.
so it just
So-
wouldn't be the size that's noted.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
It's not the size that's noted. I'm just, okay.
I'm gonna limit to just a couple more comments, and I'll get,
Just real quick, do I hear any kind of commitment on the part of the select board to address what Marilee and Andrea are saying in the future? Or am I hearing that it's just too big, so we really can't address it?
I don't think I was saying it's too big. I think it'd be a big topic to try to incorporate into this in a timely manner. I mean, I think we'd be looking at, you know, I'm guessing 2 or 3 years of looking at this, because in fact, that kind of change would change the entire plan for the village growth.
Absolutely.
Not that it's
And
impossible,
that
but.
is the task that we're always in conversation with, so.
And this is a changing process. So even if we were to move forward
late
with
for
this, if it
attempts
happened, you know, 5 years from now, we'll be looking at it again.
I'd love to hear from Alex and Maggie what they were thinking when they proposed that road and bridge over Patrick Brook in the wetlands. Because they said that they thought a lot about building in the floodplain, and that was a big consideration. So I don't understand if that was a consideration, how this was a conclusion. I'd be interested.
Well, you're talking about the West Side Road?
I don't know what it's called on this map. It's 14 and
That's been
15.
on the map since
15 years.
2009. Yeah, it's been on the map for a long, long time.
Okay.
And I think as Alex mentioned, it's highly unlikely that a bridge would actually be bought, it would be built. It would be so expensive. But yeah, I mean, it's just been a vision kind of a thing, you know, it's just leaving the possibility open.
So Marilee, to clarify, in 2009, there was this vision for a larger village.
Yeah.
It included the area to the west of Kinney Drugs. It included the area where Kinney Drugs is, actually. That was previously zoned agricultural. And as a part of those discussions, we tried to fit the new zoning district into the natural constraints, including the flood hazard area. But there was an understanding that some of the flood hazard area behind Kinney Drugs would be impacted, but we would limit it to a certain area. And that connectivity from north to south beyond just Route 116 was an important piece of that, so that we weren't just a one-road town. So that was not a unanimous decision. Andrea was on the select board at that time and voted against that zoning expansion. And I don't want to speak for her, but I remember her saying it was in part because of this same issue. So this has been a point of contention in terms of the policy decision for some time. Historically, after that, the planning commission did relook at our flood hazard regs and in fact did come to the select board with a proposal to ban all development in the flood hazard area, which would have made, you know, this part of our growth plan impossible. There wouldn't be those connections, there wouldn't be neighborhoods, you know, north of the Farmall Drive neighborhood. It was the select board that shot that proposal down and said, no, we had this vision for a larger village that we talked about in 2005 through 2007 and embodied in the 2009 regs and official map. Give us an exception. Give us a way that we can show that there won't be an adverse impact and allow that to happen in a limited way. And that was the policy decision then. So maybe those were wrong decisions. Maybe we have new information now and we want to revisit those decisions. But there has been a long history and a design to move in that direction, which does include building in a portion of the flood hazard area. And Andrea's not wrong. I mean, generally speaking, that is frowned upon in the planning world. But that was the process by which we got to that point. It's not as if the entire flood hazard area is open for development. the select board at the time was very concerned about trying to preserve the ability for this north-south connection to happen to the west of 116, and that's why they wanted something to allow it to happen under the right kind of review.
Thank you, it's very helpful.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table?
There is.
Do you have that, Val?
Yes, I do.
Do you want to repeat it for us?
I will. Aaron made a motion to remove item 34 from the proposed official map as presented.
And I think that if...
Plain and simple.
And I think, just to clarify, if that happened, then we would go ahead and schedule another public hearing to try to move forward. Does that seem right?
So would it be correct to add on to remove 34 and otherwise accept the town map as is?
Friendly amendment?
Yes. So.
And the zoning regs as presented.
So as
Yes.
so part of it is the planning commission has had that there a long time. So I get what we're talking about, removing it. Do they get to come back and have a say as to why? I guess Maggie's here, can talk to it. I saw Rolf walk in.
There's the report memo coming back that
Yeah.
they're required by statute to give us.
So we'll get some feedback from the, which is what was that?
50-page memo.
Yeah.
But if we decide to remove now and they come back with a memo, it's kind of moot, right?
I mean, we haven't voted it through. We're just voting it to make the change and bring it back to the, for a public hearing.
Okay.
So it's possible, you know, what we get, feedback, like I said, I came in here with the intention of having, set intentions of having an open mind, and I'll have an open mind for when I hear, if there's something there. So that's the motion. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed say no.
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 Okay, so it's 3-2. So we'll make that change and we'll end up coming back.
Renee and I will work with you, Phil, on an appropriate date.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I think it'll probably be end of January, I think, realistically, because of budget time. And that should still give us some time. All right, thank you. And I'll apologize to the Planning Commission for getting this far down the road. You know, I was part of it, and then taking a step back, but hopefully we continue to move forward. Thank you.
Thank everybody for coming.
Yes.
That was a good discussion.
It was.
I'm not even looking at the time.
That's a general.
Oh, Jesus.
You did a good job, though, Phil. And people needed to be heard.
Yeah.
It's really, it was a very important issue. It needed the time. That's what a community is about.
So we're gonna jump in on this other thing. Where is it? I have it here.
Number 3?
No, we're on 2.5.
Not even to 3. So,
Call into work now. We'll find out.
Next item on the agenda is
our addition.
an addition that we made concerning a grant proposal.
So I apologize, Jess, for having you stay so long. But you're welcome to come up
You're
and sit
welcome
in
to-
this seat right here, the guest of honor seat.
Introduce yourself.
Is it all right if I sit next to her? so
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
collaborators? Just to introduce Jess, this is Jess Hyman from CVOEO, which I think I can say, the Champlain Valley, no, I can't say it.
Almost.
Office of Economic Opportunity, right,
Yeah.
which not unlike the Hinesburg Community Resource Center is a sort of an umbrella group that has multiple programs within it that does a lot of good stuff
Yeah.
in the Champlain Valley. And one of the programs that they do is their mobile home project, in
Yeah.
which they provide support and guidance for mobile home owners and mobile home parks. And they were very involved when both Triple L and Sunset Villa talked about becoming cooperatively owned. And the Triple L project never happened, but as we know, Sunset did, and that was a good thing. In any case, the Working Community Challenge Grant Program is something that the Federal Reserve of Boston makes available to communities, and they've been doing it in southern New England for several years, and they're rolling it out to Vermont for the first time this year. And it's an innovative and a little bit hard to wrap your head around kind of a program in which they will provide, I believe it's $10,000 for the planning phase, so up to $10,000 for a broad group of groups, a broad group of interest groups to discuss a possible idea that could advantage lower income communities. And the kinds of ideas could be as broad as crime prevention, better preparation for kids going to school, economic development. It's meant to be the kind of a project that is not necessarily focused on a specific piece of infrastructure, but rather bringing a collection of change makers together to move in a positive direction.
Enhance the community.
Yeah, oftentimes positive social change on writ large. And so if you look at some of the projects that they've funded in Connecticut and Massachusetts, you'll get a flavor of the kinds of projects they're looking for. In any case, hard to describe, but they will fund a planning process from January to June for that $10,000 to help bring groups together and talk about what a real project could be. And then they will invite those groups to then apply for an implementation grant of up to $300,000 to actually work on that project. So it's a little bit of money to talk about good stuff, and then it's potentially a very large amount of money to do something. After talking with Renee's office about whether we had the capacity or had any ideas, my basic thought was no. We couldn't really come up with something, and we have limited capacity. So I reached out to several area agencies and groups, and Jess's was one of those, to say, do you have an idea? And here are some concepts that the planner in Shelburne he and I had talked about. Anyways, Jess came up with a good idea. And so CVOEO is going to apply for the planning level grant. The deadline for the application is next week. Mm-hmm. And so they're moving forward with that, and they're working with several towns, Shelburne and St. George specifically, to move forward with that. And the reason that Jess is here tonight is to see if Hinesburg Selectboard would also support that grant application and be willing to be a partner in this first planning level exercise from January to June. And then I'll stop talking and you can fill in the details.
You did a great job there. And really the crux of this planning project is to look at how we can increase civic engagement and social cohesion. So really we want to make your public hearings twice as long as they already are by involving more people. No. But it's really all about giving more people, especially people of lower incomes, a voice in our communities, and seeing what the barriers to civic engagement are, and helping connect communities better than they're already connected. And so we were really excited when Alex and Dean came to us and said, well, we'd like to focus on mobile home communities. What can we do? And so so CVOEO works primarily in Chittenden, Franklin, Grand Isle, and Addison counties. And we have 3 statewide housing programs. The Vermont Tenants, which supports and advocates for tenants' rights. The Fair Housing Project, which is the program that I work in that works on anti-discrimination and inclusion and affordable housing, and then the mobile home program, where we've been supporting mobile home communities and resident organizing for decades. And so this opportunity through the Working Communities Challenge really fits well with work that we're already doing in organizing and mobilizing within mobile home communities, and allows us to look at how we can make our communities stronger. And working with Hinesburg, Shelburne, and St. George, it's very wide range of incomes and housing types in all these communities. So it's a great opportunity to look at what's working well and to use some great examples of civic engagement and things that these 3 towns especially Hinesburg is already doing, and then identify some areas that could be strengthened. And the beauty of the planning process is the planning grant is, if awarded, there's time to actually make sure that all the right people are at the table. We can have some really good discussions about what's needed in town and what projects could be done, and have the time to really think it through and plan. The way that this proposal is developed is very collaborative. What they're looking for is a cross-sector partnership. And so each town would be very heavily involved. The leaderships of the different mobile home communities. There are other community organizations like the Hinesburg Community Resource Center, which is interested as well. The Clemens Family Farm, which is located in Charlotte and is doing a lot of social cohesion and diversity and inclusion work, would be part of this. So it would be a really exciting project. What it would mean for the town to participate in the planning process, CVOEO would manage the grant, manage the implementation, manage the funds, and what we'd be looking for from Hinesburg is just a commitment of some time, either staff time or volunteer time, to participate in that planning process, and to help shape the proposal. But there's no outlay of funds, not a huge outlay of time, but more we're looking for the commitment to be a part of it.
Engage,
exactly.
Engage in the
Yeah.
process.
The documents talk about 3 full-day meetings where these interest groups representatives would come together and have these discussions. So, as a core partner, if that's what you're agreeable to having us be, we would be committing to, as Jess said, sending staff or volunteers to 3 full-day meetings.
Maybe some of our affordable housing committee members.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then there would be, within that, the $10,000, there would be funds available to help remove any barriers to people
That people
attending.
might have,
So, if people needed childcare or travel stipend or food for the meetings, or if there's, staff time needed to be covered, we would work that into it.
Okay.
You have a question?
I have a couple questions.
Of course.
One, it says the deadline is November 1st. Is that,
that was, we had to submit a letter of intent, and we submitted that by November 1st, and then we were approved for to put in the application for the planning grant. So that's the stage we're in now.
I heard you mention St. George a lot, but St. George wasn't in the write-up at all. Charlotte was, and I just wondered why.
Sure, that was just because at the point where we wrote the letter of intent, we hadn't gotten the approval from the St. George Select Board yet at that time. They had expressed, the town clerk had expressed an interest, but really wasn't comfortable agreeing to be on the paperwork without talking to Select Board. So since then, I presented at both the St. George and Shelburne Select Boards, and they're both fully on board and really excited about the projects.
And Charlotte is in here with a question mark? So is that because you wanted Charlotte to be involved just with the Clemens Farm, or?
Yeah, so the way that the Federal Reserve process works is that they accept letters of intent from anyone, but they only accept planning grant applications from one entity per priority community. Hinesburg is a priority community. And so what they did was they said, we actually have 2 applications. We have one application or letter of interest from the Clemens Farm, and we have one from CVOEO. And they said, you guys figure out a way to work together and come back with one proposal. And so it's been a really fascinating and wonderful process of taking these two proposals, which at first seemed very, very different, but then when we talked to each other, we realized the main goal, which was to get our communities working together better, was shared. So we're working with them to fit that in.
Because I'm not sure Charlotte allows trailers, but I don't think they have any trailer parks, so I was curious why they were included. But
and it's important to note that that municipalities are not necessarily the drivers for this program. So Jess has talked about the fact that she's been to the select board in Shelburne and St. George and now in Hinesburg. But the Clemens Farm proposal had nothing to do with municipalities. They hadn't talked to a single one. They had their own idea, and now Jess is, I don't know exactly how, because I didn't see the connection at first either, but she's been able to work with the Clemens Farm to wrap it in with this proposal, which was a little bit more municipally spawned.
Yeah, since the one of the key areas is civic engagement, we felt it was really important that the local governments and volunteer boards be invested in the process as well.
Sure. No, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Jess, so what specifically do we have to do tonight?
I think just show your
Okay.
support.
That, and then we could certainly make a motion just to show our support if we wanted to. And the other thing is, as I was reading the memo we had or whatnot, it made a lot of sense to me because, you know, we get a lot of input on what to do on lot 15 or anything in the village area. And, you know, sort of out of just, oh, maybe we should put a little park up near Triple L. You know, it's just, or a sidewalk going up there really is almost an afterthought in a way. Yet there's an awful lot of people that live up there and we don't get a lot of input, and for good reason, I think. And it was well described in that memo. So I think it's definitely an appropriate thing to move forward with.
Yes, yeah. And I'm happy to make a motion to support this proposal. I think it's a real need, this planning grant proposal from CVEO.
CVOEO.
CVEOO, EOEO.
Okay?
I'll second Marilee's motion.
All right, thank you. Any more discussion? I'm just trying to move forward. And all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, great. So keep us informed on what's happening, and this is really good.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
Alex, for being, helping describe it and helping us understand it better.
Thank you, and thanks for squeezing this in on a very
Sure.
busy night. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your work.
All right.
All right, item 3. So this is, the next item is and I imagine Alex will stay for this one too, a request that the fees associated with the potential development of the Vestry, kind of in front of the Catholic Church, come to Select Board to ask. I'm going to recuse myself from this because I'm associated with the United Church, who actually owns the building now. So I'll recuse myself. I know I've been involved in it quite a bit for the last few years, but so with that, I think I'll go sit down there.
All right, I can take over from here,
Thank
and we have Alex here for this, and Rolf, are you here as well? I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge you, Rolf. Nice piece of recognition in the newspaper. Was it today, yesterday? The house.
Didn't actually hit the newspaper, just
I saw
the
it
digital
online
media.
at least, yeah. It was nice, and then now you're coming here to talk about making another nice building here. And keeping
Maybe.
one, maybe, right? You know, at least that's the intent in our village. Maybe really briefly, being aware of time, the proposal is the Vestry building, which is right there at the entrance to St. Jude's, correct? And it's to keep the building and rehab it, tear it down, rebuild it. What's
We're applying for a zoning waiver.
Right.
Variance.
Variance,
let's call it.
so-
The key request, just to keep it short and
Yep.
sweet, is waiving the fees related to the permit review, the initial permit review that would be necessary to redevelop the building.
Yep.
So previously, the United Church came in front of you and said, we would like to demolish the building
And we
because
did
it's a
so.
public
And
safety
we-
hazard,
we-
and we'd just like to take it down.
Yep.
And the town has an interest in the building. We used to use the building. And so would you please waive the fee? And you said yes. The United Church delayed on actually pursuing that permit because Ralph's group came to them and said, we think we could reuse the building and do something more innovative than just tear it down. So now I'm making the same recommendation that you waive that fee for that initial level of review so that that can be further explored. It is just that initial fee as described in the
Yep.
memo. There will likely be additional permitting necessary if these variance requests are granted. And Ralph and I have talked about that the project would not seek waivers
Yeah.
for those additional fees in the future. It's just this initial one.
Seems like
is
a fairly
little
straightforward request, and I mean, unless there's any discussion, I would take a motion.
Yes, I'm offering a motion to waiver the fee.
Do we need to put an amount on, or just the fee is fine?
It's
$250.
defined in the memo, totaling
Yep.
$345.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second it, but I do.
Second.
A couple comments.
Okay, and then comments, let's go to Phil first here.
Just a comment from, I just want to say the United Church did come here and look to potentially demolish the building. But before we did that, we specifically put the word out that this is what we're thinking of doing, and we wanted to, we understood that it was important to let the people in the town know these are our plans in case there are other plans. And Rolf and company, I think, stepped in and said, wait a minute, we might be interested, and so the church has been patient to see, where this could go. We still own the building, we still have all the liability associated with the building. We still pay insurance on the building.
The building's still standing.
Just for reference, how old is the building?
We think.
It was built in the early 1800s. I think it's not so much that the building's that old, and I'm not an authority on the history, so don't listen too carefully. But I think there are parts of the building that came from other structures, like that Palladian window.
Did that get
that
taken to
are
safe
that
place
came from the
somewhere?
Congregational Church, I think originally that
I think it was the Baptist church.
Okay, early 1900s. So there are components of the building that are pretty old. As a whole, I'm not sure it's actually the oldest structure in town. But
Is that window still in place, or has it been removed and safekeeping?
it's still in place. We put
Okay,
plywood
notice
over it.
there's the wood over it.
We sandwiched
Yep.
the window.
Yep.
That's fairly significant restoration effort,
Yeah.
right there.
Other comments?
Yeah, so I'm willing to do this. I'm just kind of curious what the timeline is, because when we agreed to waive the fee to have it demolished, our concern was people getting hurt because the tin is blowing off. It's in danger, in my opinion, of collapsing. So I don't want this to be open-ended. I kind of either would like to figure out we're either going to fix it in a short amount of time, or we're going to shore it up, or we're going to demolish it. I don't know what that time could be, but I mean, we were concerned about this more than a year ago, several years ago, and
So
it's
what-
not in any better shape.
And so what comes to mind is there fundraising efforts that need to be had
We
to
have some seed money
Yeah.
to make
before
some repairs.
work can
As soon as the
happen?
ownership transfer happens, and the ownership transfer is really dependent on this
Yeah,
zoning variance application, because the lot is undersized by town standards.
sure.
And if that variance isn't issued for whatever good reason, then our efforts would be somewhat futile.
Yeah.
Because we would propose, I guess, what would generally be considered a change in use.
Yeah.
Still a kind of meeting facility,
Yeah.
mostly for public use. But we've looked at the building, fairly carefully. The church actually did a kind of structural analysis or an analysis of the building. And there are some parts that are definitely not doing well. We also had our own structural engineer look at it more carefully. And we did, plywood that window, and we stabilized some things on the roof surface itself so that the metal wasn't blowing off, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'd love to say, I've been telling the church, okay, yeah, tomorrow. We started this discussion, I think, about this time last year. So
Yeah.
it hasn't gone quickly, that's for sure.
Well, let's not delay it tonight. Any other comments? Anybody? So we have a motion on the table from Marilee, second by Tom. You have it?
Yep.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Okay,
There
thank you
There's
very
forward
much.
momentum for you.
Yeah,
And
thanks.
thank you for doing that.
Yes,
I'm a big,
Yeah, we'll
you
see.
storing the old
Please let us know.
Yeah.
Well, I did mine really quick,
Hey,
so I don't know what your deal is.
I just like to say it's really boring on that side, and those seats are cold and hard.
And I suggest we bypass 4 and 5 and go right on to the budget reviews.
Sure. Yep.
because we have
I think
people here in
that
the
seems
audience.
reasonable. Is everybody okay with that?
It puts us pretty
Go
close
right
to on
to
time.
7.
Is there just any timeline on the gas?
Yeah,
issue?
we can go back to it at the end. There's like the people
Oh,
that are
okay.
here,
Yeah.
I'd like to get them in
All
and
right.
out.
So with that, we'll go to item 7, and this is why we're here, talk about the budget. We have 5 items. First is agency request review committee. So come on up. And we have it in our packet. The proposal after it's been reviewed by the committee. Is it A or B?
7A.
I'll let you, Kathy, if you wanna, or whoever.
Okay, I'm gonna just kind of read from our minutes, I guess, to say what we did. We had a few changes this year. We had the annual grant awards since 2009 have been about like 28,000 to 32,000. This year, we've had some changes. The Hinesburg Community Resource Center, as you know, is not going to our committee now.
Right, they're gonna have, they've asked
That's a
to
separate
put
line
on their
item.
own separate line item, yes.
And we were requested from you to be aware of that. And we usually suggest that they are given 13,000, so we just took that off our budget from the very beginning. So we carefully reviewed and discussed 7 submitted applications and all the corresponding agency information with priority of awards given to agencies who serve the greatest number of Hinesburg residents. We consider the level of service to Hinesburg residents, thoroughness and timeliness of the applications, history of services provided, % of administrative budget per agency, and the circumstances such as project needed. There were fewer applications this year compared to last year.
Yes.
And the Hinesburg Community Resource is no longer on our list, but Hinesburg Rides has switched to Age Well. So you will see a increase in what Age Well has asked from
Okay,
other years.
yeah.
So we just kind of
Gotcha.
switched it over
Yeah.
to them. So do you want me to go down and we basically level funded
Yeah.
everyone.
And I think we understand your process, and we definitely appreciate you taking the time to evaluate, applications. And I hope you don't take the fact we took out your biggest one, the community center, but it seems appropriate, since they're a big piece and they really just serve Hinesburg. And some of these others, are more, could be a little more regional, and they require a little bit of analysis of, how does it benefit Hinesburg, so.
One thing to note is the steps to end domestic violence. They missed their deadline, and so what we tell folks is if they do the opportunity, they would need to find a Hinesburg resident to advocate for them at town meetings. So they likely will have someone
Yeah.
in the audience for town meeting.
That won't be the first time.
Right,
Yeah.
yep.
So with that in mind, can we anticipate a line item in that cell on the
There-
spreadsheet? Should we, I should say?
Well, there may be a request on the floor
Right,
at
so
town
should
meeting.
we, as we talk about this tonight?
We had that in our mind
Yeah, how much?
when we were.
Well, I mean, if you show this chart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
In a
couple
way-
$1,000.
Well, I'm saying if you show
Yeah,
this
they took it.
chart and we go with the recommendation for tonight.
Yeah.
And it shows that line item this year wasn't part of it, and it would be explained it didn't meet the deadline.
Right.
Then typically, then somebody would say, well, here's how it does serve. And if they were thinking, they would say, if we'd have applied on time, would you have, and you probably would say probably.
Yeah.
And,
That's kind of where I'm going
Yeah.
with that, so as to kind of think of this as that's coming.
Yes, that happened last year.
Yeah.
But why is it that they did not serve any residents last year? It says NA.
No, they did.
No, that's for, in the
Didn't get any
recommendation for
data.
this year.
Okay, even though it says
Oh, yeah, no, you're right.
2018.
2018.
Oh, where you at?
2018, 0.
I don't know.
Or not available.
I have no idea either.
I think it was just a typo.
So it says they served about 86 residents in 2017, and it says NA in 2018, and it's just blank in 2019.
Did they not apply in
I
2018?
think
Maybe we don't have data, maybe.
It says 2350 last year.
they.
Do you
they
have
may
it on your computer to go back to 2018? I didn't.
Oh,
on the-
you've got the Excel version here. Yeah, that will do that.
But this is from
That might
last,
answer that.
from last year, and
Let me just go into
we don't have them.
They weren't on there last year?
No,
Okay. Oh, yes, it says right here.
They
Right.
didn't,
Yeah,
yeah. Looks like
okay.
they didn't.
It didn't apply last year.
I guess there's the answer for you.
But they said that they were going to, but then we never did receive it.
But there's probably still a number, we just don't know what it is.
Oh, how many people they served?
Yeah, but they didn't get funding, is what you're saying, from
Right.
us, but they probably still served people.
It's unfortunate they missed the deadline
Yeah.
because these folks do a great job of vetting these
Yeah.
for us. And without that layer, if they come to town meeting and we don't know who they are, anybody could be in there and stick up their hand and say, we want $5,000. And if you have a good story, well, which is why I think this is so important. And we put the deadlines out there for a reason. And because it is
Exactly.
important.
And there was some group last year, it might have been the Steps to End Domestic Violence, it might be another one, I don't remember, but they were having a lot of administrative
Oh, I remember that.
problems, and a lot of the
was a different
providers
one, but
quit
that was-
because
yeah.
they were
Yes.
so upset.
Yeah.
So that's an example of what you're talking about.
In the same vein, what was the Howard Center? And I'm just asking purely out of the amount of residents served, like in 2018, and that's a lot of folks comparatively.
Yeah.
So it looks like they got $1,000 last year. I'm just wondering what that was specifically, the Howard Center, and
What, you want to ask what their application was this year?
it doesn't look like it says no request. So I assume they didn't. I was just
We didn't
curious.
get one from them.
Okay, we
But,
didn't get one from
last
them.
year, this is the,
Okay.
to write it from last year, they got $800.
See, 1,000.
Yeah, it says last year at that. I'm just
Awesome.
curious, just
Oh.
because of the amount of folks they were serving. It seems $1,000 is a pretty good investment to help 300 folks.
Oh, yeah.
They're a big organization. Yeah, they
Yeah.
do serve a lot of people,
Yeah.
but I think they've gone through some structural change the last couple of years that may have changed
Maybe, yeah.
what they do.
This is last year's application. They didn't
It
send
may
an
be
application
that
this year.
it's not worth their time
Maybe.
for $1,000, maybe, because they, I imagine they're $1 million.
Have other efficiencies in place.
Yeah,
Well, you
So
would
do we
think
need a
that
motion for this?
$1,000 is $1,000.
We do?
I think.
For,
No, this is just
no,
reviewing.
this
This
is
is
just all the
reviewing.
budget
Sorry.
process.
Yeah.
We're gonna be, you aren't gonna need a motion for any of these budgets.
Yeah, the only big change is that many people did not apply, and also age well went up, but it was because of Hinesburg Rise.
Right,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, that makes
Okay.
sense. Yeah. So, you had talked about maybe having space for, those we think might come, but
Yeah.
I think anticipating that might not be efficient.
You gotta go with what you have in front of
Yeah.
you, and then, you play everything else
We
as it
added the
plays out.
13,000 to the 14,350. We still wouldn't be up to the 29 that we
Right,
still
yeah.
gave last year.
Yeah,
So
Okay.
we had it in our,
yeah,
yeah.
all right. I'm all right with this. Everybody,
Yeah.
okay. Thank you again.
Okay.
It's a,
You're welcome.
it's a service. I think, as Tom said, it's hard for us to try to evaluate this, and you guys are independent, and,
And we are
Do
looking
it
for
on
one
your
more
time.
person. We have someone leaving.
Okay.
So,
Let's
yeah.
bring that up at the town meeting if we don't have somebody before that.
That's how you
That's a
gotta be.
good time.
And I do remember town meeting days when we used to vote on each one of these
Right.
separately.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, I know it.
Way after midnight.
Not like tonight.
Yeah.
All right, thank you. Next, Jen, swim up here.
Dribble up, it's basketball season.
Practice at 5:30 tomorrow.
Just kidding, 6:45.
Hey, Jen, I've got music now for swimming. I got a little thing with you, and it's working really
jealous.
well.
Okay,
Right, so recreation budget.
okay.
So we also have that in our packet, along with not only, it's always surprising, you have the cost, and then you have the income side of it, which is pretty significant. It's like
Yes.
$80,000 or something of fees.
So, looks like you have
Maybe you
that.
could just tell us the highlights of
Oh.
any,
Sure. Well, I would say one of the highlights is having Tom Giroux helping with the all of the mowing and the mulching and the weed whacking and the care at the new Bissonnet
at the new
Recreation
fields.
area.
And that was a change over the last 2 years to say, let's take care of it ourselves.
Right.
And might get better care, I think.
Right. So I
And
would,
also, thank Tom because he did all the fertilizer and all that too.
right, so a shout out to Tom Giroux and also a shout out to Tom Ayer, who's kind of the grass wizard, the fields that really,
I've been called worse.
the grass maestro. But yeah, the fields are in really nice shape. Millie's field is just beautiful. It's lush, it was green, a lot of weeds. And the second field that we named Airfield is coming in beautifully. So it is a pleasure, an absolute pleasure. So satisfying. So that's a huge highlight for the Recreation Commission and the Recreation budget. So thank you to Tom Giroux and Tom Ayer for all of their loving care of our new recreation area. So another little highlight that, I chatted with Renee is that we're still in a little bit of a holding pattern with the expenses. We've got two fields in, and we'll have a third field kind of in the mix in the spring. I don't know that we'll be on it specifically, but that'll give us a better feel for what we'll be spending. But I think we're almost there. So.
Should be close.
Yeah. And then other than that, in terms of a highlight, I think in preparing this budget, there's not a great deal of increase in it. Very little, fairly lean budget, and a lot of donations. Now, our fireworks display is thanks to the HBPA's golf fundraiser, the ongoing fundraising for the Bissonnette Recreation Area. The donations that come through, every bottle and can that Tom Giroux brings in.
I'm helping that. I just want to say that.
It's incredible, and just I think coming over the finish line with the Mead family donating the bleachers, the beautiful memorial bench for Paul Hopner, just. I think what ends up happening is this is such a community effort that people are coming in and wanting to put their personal mark on it. So I think those are all really good things.
So at the bottom, there's two other tabs. There's the projected capital reserve.
Yeah.
So I had Joan put in what the balance, so on the left hand, or in the sort of in the middle on the left-hand side is the beginning balance as of 6/30/2019. This is what, and then in between are increases and decreases that have been spent this year or added this year. And so the final is where we're projecting the balances will be at the end of 6/30/2020. So as of right now, or as of the date she did this, there was just under 50,000 still.
Yep.
Side.
And I assumed I would see it here. We continue to put 5,000 toward the fields.
We do,
As our,
so that's in the
sort of our annual. Yep.
capital transfer.
Yep.
That you noted. And the last one is revenue, so I took the revenue from the last 4 years, and just so that you could see the revenue side. This final column is just sort of an average. That doesn't mean that's where we're gonna be putting forward FY 21, but that's just to kind of see where the revenue, and there's a little bit of a story to that too, and Jen can share. You'll notice there's a decrease in revenue and fees and registration, but Jen, you can speak to that as far as the programs that have changed.
So yeah, held fairly steady in the 80,000 range. Unfortunately this year, fortunately and unfortunately, the youth ultimate frisbee program that we had been running, which was pretty vibrant in the fall, that Dan Opton was running, ended up the school started taking that over, which is a good thing. Then kids are able to do it after school. There's not a cost associated. So, that's a good thing. So we did lose that. And then I also lost a long-time arts and crafts program with Chris Billis. She took another position. She actually had been offering this class for almost 15 years. So it's a long time. So sorry to see her go, but that was a piece of it. In addition to the discounted Smuggler's Notch lift tickets that I could no longer offer. So it's just...
That's a tradition.
It was a big tradition.
I like this.
I fought
Yeah.
really hard to hang on to that tradition, but I think unfortunately with a lot of ski areas, with various
Consolidation.
changes.
Yeah.
A lot of economic changes going on there.
Maybe
Yeah.
we can approach Bolton Valley and see, yeah.
And I
So,
have, I
yeah,
just, I
okay.
can't get the $15 lift tickets from,
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
held on to for a long time.
Yeah.
But that's, that's the revenue, that's the discrepancy,
Yeah.
about
Okay.
$10,000 of those four programs.
So in the current fiscal year,
So-
we had 75,000 in revenue, in what we projected. 75,000 in revenue for fees and registration, which
Pretty close.
we're somewhere in that
close.
range. We'll look at it.
Yeah.
And then 1,000 for other rec income and 500 for rental town hall. So that's, we're in, and the July 4th donations are shown in the regular budget, so we're not offsetting that. That's in her regular piece.
All right, is there anything else? I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, it's not a lot of, I mean, it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a pretty
Yeah.
solid program, so.
But nothing is, I mean, we're not
big
approaching
changes.
any big
Yeah,
items.
and the software, is still using that, and that's.
It's great.
Yeah,
It's
good.
amazing. And I was going to note, on the software, I'm able to run various reports, and what I am finding is that the majority of people are paying with a credit card. The number of checks, cash has almost diminished, and checks are just shrinking constantly. So it's
good.
it's good. It's
Yeah.
convenience for people. And I'm able to take a credit card transaction in the office, and I'm also able to do a refund right through the system that will just credit the card instead of a check, so I don't even have to bother Missy. So the efficiency is huge.
Good,
So,
yeah.
Jen, did I see something in your minutes last night? There was some talk about the rink.
yes, there was a family that came to the last meeting. A mom and her son came to the meeting, and they were going to do some research and do some fact finding and see if they could assemble a team of volunteers and that sort of thing. So the Recreation Commission has that open, agreeing that is a great deal of work to get
Yeah.
that project up and running. It's definitely more than just one family. So the Recreation Commission's kind of working on that as a possibility.
That sounds good, yeah.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good way to start it off again.
Yep. See if there's enough interest, enough people to help before we start putting a good amount of money into the curbing.
Right.
Which would raising the curbing would allow us to fill the water higher so that you don't have the middle part that's higher draining. So, yeah. More on that later.
Yeah, that's good though.
Yeah. All right, any more questions? I'm not trying to rush anybody other than
It's fine. We've got people
looking
waiting.
at time. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
So a quick break, or you want to move on?
We could take a quick break, so we'll say 6 minutes or so. We're back to item 7, and we are in the third of 5 items, buildings and facilities. And Eric is managing that portion. So we have that in our budget. We should maybe just
7C.
talk about some highlights in here.
I think the biggest change is in the capital transfers, as far as volume. Just adding for sidewalks, trees, town hall upgrades, and sidewalk pile.
So, I mean, all those things that we did in the current year.
Continue.
Continue. And so there's likely to be changes. We may be increasing those as we go. I'm waiting, Paul, our tree warden is doing, trying to, develop the budget of what he needs in thinking about the emerald ash borer as well as just all the street trees that we have now. We did lose some because of a dry summer last year. We saw trees that died that we had to replace, so he's just gonna be looking
All
at
right, so
that
there
number.
could be some changes.
We could be increasing
So,
that.
It's interesting, when you look at it, about 25% of it is going into capital.
Yeah.
Which is what we said we wanted to do, right? We wanted to
Take care of
save
what we
money and take care of things we do, and that's what this budget's all about, really, maintaining what we have.
So, in the current year, we put 10,000 towards a replacement of a sidewalk plower. And now, we're either, doing that amount again. It's, we're at that point, the life of the current one, where we're spending more on maintenance, so it
Yeah.
is time to start thinking about replacement.
So
Perhaps
we'll-
what we have now could be a payment
Yeah.
if needed.
So, so we'll bring that up to 20,000, another 10,000.
Right, yeah.
We have sidewalk construction, and that is potentially maintaining the sidewalks we have.
Yeah, so that's, some repairs and things of current sidewalk network. The other thing we talked about, I had suggested last year to be thinking about this year is perhaps instead of utilizing fund balance to offset the tax rate, is maybe taking a big chunk and doing we had the sidewalk capital improvement plan done by Tyler Billingsley, and perhaps we could, check off a fair amount of that. But we'll have
Yeah.
to see where we
Yeah.
land
Yep.
as
I think
we get
that,
closer. 'Cause
you
there
know,
are some other
utilizing that fund balance, if we think that we have some, if we were to say sidewalks, we wouldn't necessarily, put it all there, but there were a couple items, I think, in Tyler's report, specifically like the bridge, that
Right.
said, hey, it's a great bridge, but it needs a little maintenance
Yes.
so that it lasts a long time.
structurally it
So
stays. in-
those
intact.
kind of things would make sense.
And the sidewalk equipment toolkit, is that an idea for the future?
That's the one we were just talking about. That's
What
the
our
plow for the.
current plow is, is the toolcat. So we're saving towards replacing that one.
Okay.
I mean, ideally, it will stay in function as a secondary one or a backup, but we'll be replacing with a newer one that's.
That kind of works better. on the
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, works better, but also is, anytime you get a piece of equipment that's that age and you use like that, when there's salt in play,
Right.
there's a lot of wear on the equipment. So it's just time to be, like we would at any vehicle at that age,
Yeah.
we would be saving and thinking about replacement.
But it says zero. So
Where does it
where's
say
the
zero?
saving? Sidewalk equipment toolkit.
Are
Oh,
you on the capital, are you on the second tab?
That's basically, that's moved
You're in the
down.
general fund
Right.
budget,
Thank
so
you
in the
very
second
much.
tab on
That-
capital improvement plan,
Thank you.
Yeah,
I
that-
just took a snapshot of just the buildings and facilities section of our capital improvement plan for this.
And there's a small amount on the
Okay, I see.
Ford
Good, yep, great.
pickup because a percentage of it is used for this, the other percentage is used for water, wastewater, right?
30% is
Yeah.
out of
Yep.
buildings and facilities and 70% out of the enterprise fund.
Right.
So that's just the payment.
Anything else? Are we missing anything, Eric, that, that particularly on the maintenance piece or?
That's always hard to say. I mean, sometimes you think things are going well and something breaks.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, we
Well,
def-
we'd be looking for you to tell us what.
right, I mean.
So better than
we
us.
put more money in the town hall maintenance because,
Yeah.
well, it's old and it needs it, and put more money in equipment maintenance. We actually doubled equipment maintenance.
And another conversation that we've been having in different departments is just the need for more security in our municipal buildings. And this one is a prime example that we don't have any.
Improving the
we
lock
really-
system, maybe.
Yeah, so I've gotten some quotes on replacing the exterior locks in town hall. So we move away from the keys and go to an electronic thing so we can change the number, change the password, change the numbers when people leave, and it can be associated with each person, so everybody has, when people have entered or exited the building.
We don't have video cameras or anything like that.
So, I mean,
Right
those are
now
all,
we don't.
those are all types of things that,
To consider. Maybe.
So the Lot 1 capital improvement, is that for just maintenance? Is that for putting a plan together?
so that's something that, Lot 1, we've been talking about it for
Yeah.
a while,
If you ask
and
Tom, he has enough money to get started.
so
Well,
that's why I put that note, I mean, we need in the narrative, I guess I didn't have the narrative on here, but we really need to figure out what it is we're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
Because we may have the money right now, based on what we've put in there.
And what we wanna do.
So,
The idea was to just start putting a little money in there,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
that we have something. I think it goes along with the last few years of let's make sure we take care of what we
Yep.
have.
right.
And save a little bit, so, we have what we need. All right, I mean, it seems pretty straightforward, and no big changes here, no, unfortunately, no opportunities to cut.
Yeah,
So,
we try, but this is.
yeah, no, this is good. Any other comments or questions about it?
How's the O&M going with the trackers?
Good question.
They've had some challenges. We had flooding thing, and one of them kept
Yeah,
kind of
so I'll
spinning
say that.
itself.
So, so there is some flooding happening there, more than when they were originally put in. So they got one that sort of wants to twist around, maybe a second one. I've talked with Mike about going in there and maybe improving the drainage to start with. And then on a couple, there's one leaning or one or two leaning, and and they're not gonna fall over, but there is a way we can strengthen them, but it requires getting a machine in there, and right now, I mean, they're going in there with waders.
Yeah.
So I think when we get a chance this next year, we'd like to improve the drainage around there, so then we can go in there and properly
Be a good idea.
sort of fix the structures.
And now that, the uphill neighbor is, hemp versus beef, it shouldn't cause a river issue either.
Right, right, so. Good
right.
question.
Yep.
All right, great.
Okay,
Thanks,
thank you.
Eric. Thanks for
Thank
staying
you.
late. Next up,
All right.
Trails Committee.
Short and sweet.
Yes.
With our vast sums of money that we spend.
That's right. So I'm keeping the buildings and facilities spreadsheet open because that's where the Trails Committee
Oh,
is,
right.
resides in there.
Yeah, what line?
So you're at line 16?
Yep, there, yeah.
And I was surprised, maybe I already knew this, but wouldn't be the first time I forgot, to find out that you're stepping down from the Trails Committee.
Yeah.
You and George.
Yeah, we both have 3-year terms that are ending
Okay.
now, so. Yeah.
I don't have my morning black armband.
Yeah,
on
Yeah.
tonight.
Jane
Yeah.
is still hanging in there, but, yeah. Yeah, it's been 12 years, and I think it's time for new blood, new energy, new ideas, new
Fair
enthusiasm.
Have we had?
I want to spend more time with my family.
Yeah. And are there folks that are looking to, have you been encouraging
Yeah,
others?
yeah,
Okay.
we've contacted a
I've
bunch
got
of
an
people. Oh,
application
did
today.
Colin,
Oh,
he
good.
he followed through?
Yes,
Yeah.
well, perhaps at your
Yeah.
December 18th.
Yes, Colin,
Oh, good, Hunt.
Hunt, yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
So, yeah, we started to beat the bushes, and I think, and so that's great.
Yes.
Colin followed through. So, yeah, I'm not worried.
Good.
But as far as the budget goes, we just would like to request an extra $250 for our budget because we anticipate building a bridge next year on the Cars easement.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That goes along, well, the easement goes along the Charlotte Road and then bends and goes down Baldwin Road. But there's a channel,
Yeah.
sort of right in front of the farmhouse,
Yeah.
across the street from the farmhouse. That's going to take probably a 20-foot bridge or so. And so we just would like to put a little extra in our budget for materials. And that's basically what we spend our budget on is lumber and gravel and.
But you guys
Yeah.
do all the buildings, so that's the labor?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this wouldn't be labor, we're free labor, so it's
Yeah,
it's
that's
really
what I'm
paying
saying.
for
That's what I'm
materials.
saying.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah, this
materials.
case, I mean,
Reasonable.
for the one on the Russell wetland, we
Yeah, up
needed
behind there.
professional help, but we actually have a couple engineers on the committee now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, that's
Good.
great.
Yeah. This is great. I mean, I think, and that's a reasonable amount that, for the benefit we get, the bang for the buck, clearly the trails, I mean, when you add up how many people use it every day and different seasonally, I mean, there's a lot of recreation happening for very little money, so,
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, we get a lot of nice comments, and I wish we could tell you a number of users. That's always a problem for trails, is, unless you put counters out
Cameras,
there.
yeah.
You don't know,
Yeah.
so.
Well, if you walk them, you see people all the
Yeah.
time.
I think the Town Forest Committee tried that, to find out who was using the trails.
Yeah,
and-
that's right. They had a grant, a planning grant, and
they had some wild estimates.
Yeah, they extrapolated from very little data, but anyway.
All right, is there anything else you need from us?
Just money and,
Okay.
and more moral support.
Yeah, oh, okay.
We got the
That's
worker
easy.
bees, we just need the money.
Yeah,
Yeah, so that's short and sweet.
okay, great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for staying and helping.
And thank you for
You're
your
up next,
service.
Mike. Mike, do you want to shut that window unless somebody else wants it open?
It was really,
Yeah.
really.
Ah, okay, yeah.
You had all his bodies.
It did get hot, didn't it?
Just around the collar. It was getting hot.
Go back to talk about zoning.
Yeah.
Mike, should I stay?
I don't
We're gonna
think
talk
so.
about
Well,
the
I'm just
mowing
gonna-
and cracks.
Yeah, it's up to you.
We talked about it.
Yeah,
Support
I'll say, yeah.
increased mowing.
That's the only increase in the.
Okay, yeah, we saw that you
That's the
wanted
only
to,
increase.
like, mow it one more time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the vegetation grows really fast.
yeah.
So we have a copy of it in here.
Yeah, so you have,
It's not a lot different from last year's budget. I don't know what else to say. There's an increase in the mowing because we were pressured to get it mowed again.
Yeah. So how many times do you mow it?
It'll be mowed 3 times. The trails will be mowed 3 times a year.
And that's with like a brush cutter, like
Yeah,
a string,
like
big.
Yeah, we whack,
whack.
what I say. And then the main area is mowed once a year. We use the power lines as a guide.
Mhm.
We mow that area every year, and then we've got it alternating up in the back, along with this sled hill, sliding hill.
Yeah.
So can I ask, how's the dog problem in Japrags? I've heard people.
Just like everywhere else.
I've heard people say that they don't take their dogs there because they get ticks because it's not mowed that much. And I thought maybe that was a good thing.
Excuse me. I don't know what the dog problem is. We have one area that we ask people not to take their dogs on.
Yeah.
And that's in the area, the nesting area,
Yeah,
is that?
well, it's
yeah.
for people to go with, who don't like
Oh,
dogs.
okay, got it. Yeah.
More than anything else. That's really, not, it's not the nesting area, but
Mhm.
that's the reason why. But, yeah, that's about it.
It seems well used. I don't go there,
I've
you
been
know,
there
but.
once or twice, yeah. I
Yeah.
don't go there that much either. to be
Yeah,
honest with
but I
you.
think it is used. I mean, you always see cars there. and,
Yeah.
I think people value it.
Does that, the extra mowing, does that include a little weed whacking around the sign and whatnot?
It will this year.
That's
Yeah,
what-
Marie
yeah.
brought that up, yeah, we didn't.
Just to
It's
make
a
it
learning
more
process.
presentable.
Yeah.
We didn't think about it when we talked to
Okay.
Walt. but
And that's hired out now.
It's Walt,
Yeah,
yeah, Walt
yeah.
does it, that's, yeah.
So Mike, the 8,000 for natural resources, I thought there was a big bump last year to
That's
do
it.
the mapping.
Yeah.
That started.
It's the
a-
first phase.
It's the first phase of a
Okay.
3-phase project. And you know, it's funny, because I was sitting here tonight, and you were talking, in the discussion, and you were talking about, Andrew's letter, we're talking about the old floodplains and protecting those, and not building up space in that area and stuff, and I thought to myself, well, where are you gonna build? I mean, I understand that that's a floodplain, but somewhere there's pressure to build somewhere. And we have to, and where I'm going with this, with the natural mappings, we have to identify those areas that we need to preserve more than anything. The deer yards, the, whatever. But, and I'm just trying to figure out how important the mapping part is so that we can identify the places. It's not to prevent building, because I think growth is gonna happen somewhere. It's where it's gonna happen and controlling it, and that's the key component to me. So anyway, I'll get off my boat. That's the next phase, right? Currently what's happening now is the topical parts are being looked at. They're utilizing all the surfaces they can. We should be able to start the next phase sometime next year. I don't have a deadline, to be honest with you. And again, that'll be more, I think, more boots on the ground, more distinct looks, more.
Right, that was the next phase.
Bring it
was-
in, bring
yeah,
it in.
Right,
This is, right now, we're looking at general areas,
yeah.
and this next money, if we to bring it in a little tighter, and a little tighter.
Is this across the whole town? Is it just in the village? It's
The whole town.
Wow, cool.
We're trying to get the
Yeah,
whole town,
that's
identify
great.
those areas.
Yeah,
I mean,
for sure.
and I think about this, because like, they built 5 houses behind me this year.
Mhm.
And I thought to myself, well, you know, that's that area. That was great area, wooded area. I used to see bobcats cross the road up there.
that's gonna probably, so I'm thinking, where are we gonna do this, and how are we gonna get the information that we need to make those decisions that say, this is what we will allow growth to happen in this area? Because we can probably find a reason not to build on every parcel of land. Where are you gonna designate it? So, anyway.
I think that's why planning and zoning were all very much in favor of you doing this mapping last year when it first came out.
And does it continue to next year too? Is there an expectation, or is this?
I think it is, yeah.
So there'll be
I'd like to see
another-
where we're at. I'd like to step back.
Okay.
And see where we're at. What do we want, and where do we want to go from there?
Okay.
But we need to get through the door first before
Yeah.
we can start setting up the house.
All right. And we also have the Lake Iroquois Association, and they came here, and they were, I think they were asking for 15,000.
So I've included that in.
Right. Is there any, thoughts about that?
Let me see. Iroquois Association,
This is they've
is
got.
that the district or the association?
The association.
Yeah,
So
it's
this
not
is
Okay,
the
so you
district. Yeah.
the
so
milfoil mitigation efforts.
love the milfoil part. So Lewis Creek and Iroquois Association, to me, aren't part of my budget. Those are independent groups that we do a lot with and do a lot of good, but you don't appoint people to them.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have a comment on that.
Okay.
Other than a personal one that says it's good. Lake Maury is a place that does the spraying, and then they've been doing it every year for years, not every year, but every other, and their milfoil is completely controlled. It's a great lake.
So is that one of the lakes that was using this new chemical? So they
Yeah,
did
are
it
using
one
the new
year.
chemical. They used it
Yeah.
They used it last summer. It's a very specific. It doesn't go all over. It's
Yeah.
I guess
It's targeted.
It's targeted is
Yeah.
what I'm saying.
Yep.
And I just think that we're letting politics interfere with our lake and not using good science to do good things. So, anyway, that's my 2 cents.
Okay. I think, we've got that it's in there now. I have some reservations about, I'd have a hard time defending the chemistry and the treatment without really looking into it. I mean, the last go around, they got approved because it was a separate item and it passed, fine, everything's
By 2
good.
votes or something.
Well,
It was
it passed,
It was, but it was brought
then
before
there's.
town meeting too, and it was passed.
It was what?
It was brought before town meeting.
That's
Right,
what I mean.
that's where it
But
passed.
it was very close.
It was
That's-
close, but it passed. But in the end, the state said no for whatever reasons they had. So I think us as a board, we have to say, are we, we okay with putting this in there, which the implication is that the Lake Iroquois Association is hoping to move forward with this treatment of the herbicide. So I just put that out there, I guess.
So, not to derail from that, but to that point, if we were to approve that budget and they ran into the same issue where the state said no, that budget's already
Well,
spent and gone? Or?
the money that was appropriated, which was $30,000, ended up coming back in our budget.
It did.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
they but you did appropriate a small amount for them
There-
to continue with other types
The
of.
mats and different things, yeah.
They had a different plan.
Yeah.
So, when are we gonna decide that? Because regardless of how I feel, personally, I haven't decided yet how I feel about this, putting this chemical in, but I know people felt really strongly on both sides of the issue, and it was a pretty good discussion at town meeting, and I feel strongly that it needs to come to town meeting again. This is going to affect people who not only live along the lake, but live downstream, Sunset, and then wherever it drains to.
Well, I mean, so that's why I'm bringing it up. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's one option. It could be taken out and made a separate item. Or anybody at town meeting could say, I want to increase the budget or decrease the budget.
Okay.
And with the implication that this is why we can do whatever we want with it. But if we put this in and somebody said, I want to decrease the budget by, $5,000 because I don't want to do that, and it passed, then I think we would have to have a discussion about, whether they could use the money for that, I guess. I'm not saying one way or the other, I'm just saying it's a controversial issue.
Hopefully, the science will get out on the chemicals that they want to use.
Yeah.
Because it's like vaccinations to me. You should be vaccinated, but there's one report that came out a long time ago that's
Right.
been retracted.
Yeah, I mean,
puts people at risk, and it's the same. Similar.
I don't know that I would put it as vaccinations, because vaccinations have been out there so long. This is a new chemistry that's just been tried this year in Vermont. And it may be fine, I just don't know, and I haven't spent any time looking at it, and I'm not sure I'm gonna have time to make a decision, so.
I think it's been used more than 1 year.
No, not in
No.
Vermont.
Not according to the
That's what
response.
Chris Conant told us.
He came us last week, or 2 weeks ago, and told us, but anyways,
I'm pretty sure Lake
you know, I think they're looking at it, and they wouldn't use something if they thought it wasn't safe, so I'm not saying it's not. I'm just saying it's hard for me to say it is without
Sure,
understanding
and I
it
think
more.
that's what happened last time,
Yeah.
is that not enough, there was enough naysayers and chain rattling that really
Maybe.
put it away.
But
Yeah,
is
no, I'm
there-
serious.
Is there data to help that conversation? Either efficacy
Well,
data or.
then they should bring that
you know?
data.
Yeah.
They should bring that
They
out,
should be
and
prepared.
They should be prepared.
Yeah.
Actually, they should be doing it before town
Yeah,
meeting day.
for sure.
I mean,
But
I'll go back to Lake Maury. Lake Maury,
seemed
they have
pretty
no
good.
problem using
Yeah.
different things to keep their lake.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So
It's
if you're
enough of
looking
that
for
stuff.
feedback, Phil, yeah, I would support that in there. I support that way more than I do the suction harvesting, which I think is a joke.
Yeah.
And I've let them know that before.
Yeah,
They
right.
seem to insist on it, but I don't see any value in it.
Yeah.
But this, I think, yeah, you want to make sure the chemistries are good, but we talk a lot about whatever rate they might put in that lake. But you have people who own lawns who will dump fertilizer and weed killer out without any
Right.
idea as to how to use it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it just will wash
Right.
away and
Sure.
not work effectively. So, you know,
What do you know about mowing lawns?
I know a lot, and I hear from people all the time
I
that
know,
they,
well, that's my point.
you know, they go out and put
it's
this on. I'm like,
there's
well,
a constant,
you
like-
wasted it.
Yeah,
So
right,
I think
right.
if you tell people that, you know, the same people who are probably complaining about putting stuff in the lake by a certified professional who knows what they're doing is probably dumping stuff on their lawn that has no idea what
Yeah.
they're doing.
Yeah, fair enough, yeah.
So I support it.
Yeah, okay,
The lake is in bad shape.
all right. I
I'm
think
trying to
this
find
is-
out for you right now.
Yeah.
Well, we're not going to wait for you.
I know.
Yeah. All right, so,
It's nice you wanna
so the only reason I bring that up is if we're gonna have a discussion about that and wanna make a change, we ought to be, this is the time to do it. We don't wanna do it the second week of January when we're at the end and all of a sudden somebody says, oh, I don't think we should have that in there. And it's like,
Well, I
well,
do think it should be separate. I think that to respect the people who felt so strongly last year about their own health concerns, people who had dealt with cancer and didn't want to have to deal with that again, and were really against that, they should be able to say something. They should.
But that's not to say this is a cancer
Yeah, I mean,
causing
you're,
chemical.
to me,
though.
you're making
They
it sound.
don't call cancer-causing chemicals when they're first out. It's not till 10 or 15 years. Nobody puts something
But are
in.
you making the leap that
Yeah.
dumping chemicals in the lake is cancer?
no,
I
I
am
think,
saying that I know people who dealt with cancer. How
Yeah.
they got it is unknown, and they're very sensitive about subjecting themselves to unnecessary chemicals.
risks.
Yeah.
And I think what I hear Mary Lee saying is, if you asked her today, she would say, let's take that out of the budget item and
Yes.
make it its own,
Yeah.
That
its
is what I'm
own
trying to say. Thank you.
warned item that gets voted.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
last year,
What?
just like last year.
Yes, I
2
think it
years
was
ago.
2
2
years
years
ago.
ago,
Yeah.
whenever it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think I was pushing for because I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be controversial.
Right. I
And-
just want people to be able to look at it and voice their opinions.
Yeah, I mean, that's what town meeting's all about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how's that, just so we know, if we wanted to actually do that, how is everybody else feeling about that? And within that 15,000, there other treatments, so it's not
Right, it's
really
not
that
just-
clear that says this is for that.
Yeah.
So in a way, it would be a line item that says, do we want to spend money for treating the lake? And last time I did see it passed.
It's not
Despite-
specific to any type
No.
of
It's just what they're
milfoil. It's
asking
just
for.
milfoil mitigation efforts
Yeah.
in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, are they definitely gonna use chemicals? We don't even know
They're
that.
saying that's on they're continuing to investigate it.
Yeah.
But they,
There's a
again, have to
possibility if
apply
it looks
for it.
very
The state-
good, yeah, they would have to apply, so
And
There's
that's
no
why they
guarantee.
want that amount of money, is
Yeah,
to use the
additional money.
Pre-Corps.
Yeah,
Well, or something else.
yeah.
Well, that's what they told us.
Oh, okay.
That's what they're investigating and moving forward with. All right, well, I don't see everybody saying, yes, let's definitely do that, so it could still be open, but,
As in breaking it out?
yeah.
I think either way, somebody from the LCI, Lake Iroquois Association, should be at town meeting, or at least have a presentation that we can
Yeah.
Absolutely.
play.
And
And maybe
before
be back here
town
one more
meeting.
time so that we can be fully on board.
Yeah.
And I wanna defend it, but I wanna
Yeah.
make sure
Right,
that
Yeah.
Department of Health and whoever else has given their stamp of
yeah.
approval for this.
Which they'd have to get permitted.
So they're
Right.
going through their process. I think they have to apply, so I could have them back in one of the January meetings just to give an update.
Yeah.
And then perhaps if it does if we do decide to go forward, then when the February meetings, when I hold those budget review meetings, invite them again and really have them publicize that so that people will come and get their
Yes,
questions answered.
that's a good
To be
idea.
clear,
Ahead
they
of
never
that.
got an answer definitively why they were denied. Do we know? Did we ask them that?
I don't remember if it was specific.
No.
Pressure.
Yeah, I think they got a lot of.
Pressure.
They got a lot of
Yeah.
pressures.
So
Yeah, it
just FYI, the process is every 3 to 4 years. This year was their second time around, so
Yeah.
the first one was 4 years ago. And the next treatment scheduled for 2023, FYI.
And this is with the Pre-Corps?
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so that's not what Chris Conant said.
technology.
And it's the 40%.
It is a different chemical this time. It's a different
Right.
chemical.
Yeah.
Well, they use
yeah.
Pre-Corps down there. I don't know what they're using up
Yeah.
there. I'm just trying to.
Yeah, okay. All right,
So anyway, I think it should be, it's a big money item. It's bigger than anything else in the Conservation Commission's budget, so I would be really happy if it was just its own line item.
what's everybody else thinking? Tom's saying no. he doesn't-
Either
yeah.
way.
Either
I'm-
way.
I'm fine either way. I mean, it's gonna become a topic either way, whether
Either
it's
way.
its own line item or not.
Well, it makes it
People are
kind of
gonna talk
cleaner
about it.
so that the Conservation Commission, they've got a big budget
So
item with
here's
the
a thought, we could
8,000.
make it a separate line item and take it out of the Conservation Commission budget, so it
Yeah.
sits alone.
Yeah, that's what I would
Um,
All right.
That way it
Let's do
doesn't
that.
muddy
Yeah.
the
Several
waters.
things in that line item anyway, so you could just leave it there. I mean, you've got Lewis Creek in there, trees are in there.
Yeah, but there's nothing as big as, or as controversial
Right.
as that one.
That's fine, you can pull it out.
Again,
So you're saying-
people
Well,
can
yeah.
vote to reduce the budget if they choose.
Yeah, I
Right,
mean, they can go
that's
either way.
true.
Well, that's what my opinion is. I would like it to be a separate
So
line
what
item.
you're saying is you could just, in the budget, just have another thing that says Lake Iroquois, and have its own line.
Yeah, it could either have its own line, what Mike is saying, there's other things that are
Yeah.
in there that aren't specific to the Conservation Commission
And you
either,
just put a note
so.
at the end that you're gonna vote on that $15,000 item separately.
Yeah, and so people aren't gonna have issue with the things in the Conservation
Right.
Commission budget, they're
Yeah.
specific to
Yeah.
that, they're gonna,
It's,
Well, I think having them come back, not to give us a big, long lecture, but an update, a quick update, and be prepared to defend
Yeah,
the
tell them what
budget.
you're thinking so
Yeah.
that they can
Right,
prepare a plan
Right.
to go for it.
So, just devil's advocate, if the 15,000 were in your budget and it got reduced, doesn't that put at risk like your natural resources mapping?
That's up to the select
Right.
board.
that, the select board makes that
I mean,
decision.
they can-
Right, so that's why.
They say we'll
Maybe
reduce the
separate it, so-
overall budget by 10,000, but the select board says 10,000 is coming out of
Okay.
wherever.
If,
trying to protect
yeah,
the
I
other
mean, if
things,
somebody
you know.
just said, I
No, I
wanna
appreciate
reduce the
that,
budget
yeah.
by 15,000 and nothing in particular, that isn't
Yeah,
gonna
they
happen.
make a recommendation.
But
you
they
don't
would
have to
say, I
stick
wanna
with it.
reduce it because I don't like that,
Right.
then we would take that under consideration, and I
Okay.
would guess, we would say, that's what was voted, so we
Yeah,
better
it
follow.
does match up, right?
Right.
Your file, your
We
default.
won't get reelected and
You guys
be
gotta
able
keep
to
moving.
retire with our pensions. All
You guys gotta keep moving, so I'll say.
right, thanks.
One more comment. The DRB will tell you that they want more specifics in their zoning laws,
Okay,
which is
Yeah.
opposite of what you talked
yeah,
about tonight.
yeah,
all right, thank you.
See you later.
thanks. All right.
Where to?
Where to? So, unless there's an objection, Renee and I said, let's skip 8 and 10.
Will we go
I
back
just
to?
need a little
For now.
clarification. So are we leaving it in the budget, or is it gonna be a separate line item, the Lake Iroquois
we can decide down the
15,000?
road, right?
Yeah, it sounds like right now it's staying in, but we'll come back to this topic,
Okay,
so.
thank you.
And we'll get some clarification from them, from, Lake Iroquois Association.
Phil, can I say a brief thing about, so
Sure.
we're taking 8 out, but if you guys could just look at it, review it, what I put in there is a track changes version,
Yeah.
so the changes that were made since the last time, and then a clean version that includes the draft policy as well as the map and the, you didn't want the priority list, or that's what the feedback we
Yeah.
got, so
Yeah.
now it's just the network of sidewalk and including the
And I said, and which I didn't get around to, was to maybe write up a little narrative as part of it, saying, you know, it's the intention of the town to maintain the sidewalks as well as we can with the equipment we have, within the budget restraints we have. It's all part of the town plan, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, we want to work with the community, because those
Community
areas that
partnership.
we're unable to cover, you know, we encourage communities, individuals, or HOA, homeowner associations, or what have you, can help
That was
out.
already in there. I just read it this afternoon and.
So in the track changes version, there are some, things added to it. What he's saying is, what we talked about before is maybe having sort of a memo or a cover letter
In
that
addition.
is the front page of this, to sort of,
Okay.
Yeah.
to communicate that, yes, we do prioritize a walkable community.
Yeah.
We're looking for community partnership to help the areas that are really, we're having problematic for the sidewalk plow operators to get through.
Yeah,
Looking for
I thought
those
I had
things.
read that in there, but
So-
it'd be great to have
So,
it
yes.
emphasized.
I think it was on it,
And
yeah.
one other thing to speak to, a lot of people are complaining about their their yards getting
Yeah.
torn up right now.
Yeah.
We also need to think about, it's the time of year when the ground's not frozen. So we have this happen at this time of year, and we also have it happen in the spring. If you go to other communities and you start driving around, you can see some of the same thing. So it's not specific to our plow, it's not specific to that equipment, it's the time of year too.
Get your driveway plowed this time of year, so.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so
All
that's
right,
enough of that.
so should we go back to 4?
Yes.
So this is.
So
the-
this is for the Shelburne Falls, the
right, yeah.
intersection realignment that the state is doing. They, as part of that, they're gonna need to move the Vermont gas line, so they just need us to make a motion and, sign this utility relocation order.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yep.
They have an easement now for that, is it an easement? I guess it
Yeah.
is. For the line, they're just gonna move it within our property,
Right.
Is there a reason not to approve this?
I can't see
Yeah.
one.
I
This
didn't
is
see
just
it.
a formality.
I didn't see one.
That they need.
So none of the easements are like across private property, it's all town property?
We've already done, we've
It's
already gone
already
through
there,
the
and
easement.
it's not like it's a new gas pipeline.
Yeah, no, I
Right.
know, I'm just.
So with that, if we have a
I'll
motion.
make a motion for you.
I'll second it.
So I do
Alright.
have a page for you guys to sign.
Okay,
on that
so
regarding
this is
that.
a motion to relocate the Vermont gas pipeline location within the town property
At the Shelburne Falls.
to accommodate the Shelburne Falls
Intersection improvements with
Vermont
V-Trans.
V-Trans project. You got that, Val?
Yeah, well, you're approving signing the relocation adjustment order.
Yes, that is exactly what I said.
Probably a better way to
Got
say it.
You heard him so well.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So,
That's what she does with her husband, too.
All right,
I'm
and
gonna
then the
pass that
delinquent
around.
tax warrant. So every year,
This is,
this
yeah,
time of year, this
formality.
is just a formality that we do. It's just a point in time that she chooses to, what the balance of delinquencies are. Since that date, since that warrant was produced.
Some have been
many
paid.
have been paid, so that changes, so it's.
all right. Any other questions about this? So we need a motion. I'll make the motion to approve the FY19 delinquent tax warrant dated the 20th of November, 2019. So it's seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
So that's passed. And so is this is being passed.
Moving to number 9.
Got another one.
Consider changing to MVP for employee health.
Okay,
Oh,
so
yeah.
this we've talked about, Renee has been proactive and looking at options for the health benefit program. And go ahead, take it away.
Yep, so as I said, I did a lot of research, talking to other towns, some other private sector businesses and other folks, just based on their experience. Overall, MVP has come a long way, and they're really very competitive with Blue Cross Blue Shield, both the network and what they cover. So really, I feel like it's the right thing to do and the fiscally responsible thing to do to change to MVP. We're only committed for a year. You know, likely the landscape's going to change at this time next year because Blue Cross is about to lose a lot of Vermont municipalities.
Really?
So I suspect, you know, they're going to get a message that perhaps they need to, you know, there's going to be some changes that will be made. So this just commits us to going to MVP. We can still talk about, you know, what plan offerings we're talking about, you know, looking at the platinum plan. Are we going to offer multiple plans? We don't have to make that decision tonight. We just need to make the decision if we're sure.
So do we need a proposal?
Would like a motion.
Motion, yeah.
Yep.
So I make a motion that we support Renee and all the work she's done and vote to approve switching to MVP.
Second.
Okay, and discussion? So I'll add, the intention here is not to necessarily cut back on the offering we have. We now provide the Platinum program. The purpose here was hopefully everybody remains whole who has their benefit. There may be some little tweaks here and there, but generally remain whole. And it will at least provide a savings for the town, hopefully providing the same benefit, level of benefit, at a slightly reduced cost, at least for this year.
Right.
And I have talked to, since we first started talking about this, people who have had MVP, and like Renee said, they've come a long way. They were very satisfied with their service.
If we were having this conversation 4 or 5 years ago, it'd be a very different, I'd be giving different advice. But in the last 3 years, they have come a long way.
Yeah.
That's what I
And our
understand.
company has done the same thing. You know, people have a choice, and some people have chosen there. There were a couple of hiccups, but in the end, it looks like everything worked out. So,
Yep.
all right. All those in favor of approving Renee moving forward with this change, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that's passed. Thanks for doing it and being proactive, just as Mary Lee said. We appreciate that. We decided to push off 8 and 10. We move right to 11, Town Administrator Report.
All right, so I included some things in the little
annotated
agenda,
agenda,
yeah,
yeah.
a little summary. As you know, continuing to work on the FY21 budget development, so having different meetings with various departments. Final punch list items were at that, when we did the walkthrough of the Village North sidewalk, so the contractor's working on those.
Is that considered open yet, or no?
Yeah, I think it's open.
Yeah, I saw like
Yeah.
the tape was
It just
down.
hasn't been, we haven't taken it over officially
yeah,
yet,
got it.
so we're not maintaining it
Yeah,
in any
got
way.
it.
The revolving loan fund applicant closings are scheduled for Friday, so I've been doing a lot of work with the attorney,
That's for
meeting with the
both of
attorney for
those?
both of them.
Okay.
I sent the draft documents to each of the applicants today, so they're reviewing them. There's some comments on those. So until we get that finalized, you know, hoping to be able to close on them on Friday, but if there's changes that need to be made, it's possibly that could change. Town report submissions are starting to come in, so just a reminder to everybody to get their town report submissions in.
I haven't started mine, and I'll probably say I'm gonna need whatever, how many pages?
Yeah, yeah.
2 or 3 pages.
Yeah.
So,
And-
I'll try to get.
And if anyone's been taking pictures throughout the year, we
Yes.
really, that's an important part for me, is just to have the pictures tell the story too of the past year. And so if you've been out with your cameras for whatever events that are town related, love to see those.
Right, and I'll make a list of things for the town report at town meeting, you know, that we might want to highlight. I tend to highlight positive things that have happened, so
Yeah.
I'll probably make a list of, you know, it'd be nice to have 5 or 6 pictures.
I am currently
So-
looking for a cover
Okay.
artist. I'm always, you know, that's sort of the grand I'd like to have that be the surprise.
Town meeting notes,
So there we go. It might be one of you that'll have to ask at the last minute, do some stick figures, but I've worked with CVU in the past, and so HCS, I've thrown that out to their art teachers. I haven't heard back on that yet, but other local artists, the basic idea of what I ask folks is to think of something that makes them think of Hinesburg, or a special place in Hinesburg, or something that's sort of related to our town. And so that's the ask again this year. And some, it may be a photograph. It can be all types of art. So there we go.
It's like a bridge over troubled water.
Yeah.
If anyone has any thoughts or anything they'd want to submit to me, I would appreciate it.
All right.
Still looking for, let's see, we're receiving applications for some of the open positions, so within the police department and in the highway maintainer positions. There's been some interest in folks hoping to be able to interview at some point soon. Still looking for a winter sidewalk maintainer so that I'm not moving around people, staff, and trying to stretch everybody.
Have you put that on Front Porch Forum?
Not lately. We've had it out. We're just doing a lot of word of mouth.
Tom, if he wants to.
Occasionally I'll chip in.
I can say that because I'm on this side of the table.
Sorry, right.
Don't think I can't throw a pen that far.
Scooter, that would be a really good way for you to report on Hinesburg.
That might be a headline.
You could drive around in the tool cat.
Yeah.
Boy, do I have a vehicle for you.
I need to
All right.
get you into a tool cat today.
And I'm in the midst of union negotiations, so that leads
Okay.
to our need for
Executive
executive
session.
session.
Okay.
So,
All right. Any questions for me?
have you had anybody for the highway garage? Because I remember reading in the notes that they're short-staffed.
Yes, so I've been
hasn't
talking to people. I've had the ads out everywhere, so we've received some interest, and there's someone who I'm hoping to be able to interview likely
That's
soon.
great.
So we'll see.
All right. Anything else?
I did have another question. Oh, yes, I remember last time the Chittenden County Solid Waste people came, and they were going to have a phone conversation with the Broom, whatever, in
So
Broom.
Jessica
Yes.
Luisos, yes. And so they did, and she met with them out at the site. She gave them a list of things that they do need to do.
Okay.
And so they're working on that, but they had a good working relationship going through that.
So things are moving forward.
Things are
Continue
moving
to move
forward,
Great.
yeah.
And so they were able to do their bump out maybe with some modifications.
Yeah, so, yes, I mean, I think that's moving forward. There's just some things that they're gonna have to address as far as the stormwater pieces in it, in that. In the MOU, I had track changes when we looked at it with them. Their board's gonna have to look at it. They've actually sent it back to me with some other track changes, which I'm about to, so what they wanted is, have something about, Hinesburg, damage. I think when I put in the added line about if there, there was damage to be, based on CSWD, I think they added something.
The opposite.
But then they didn't change anything for hours, so
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to throw it back.
Okay.
The same thing. So we'll see how long that back
Yeah.
and forth lasts. But
All right.
So
I guess if any problems really
survival of the
arise,
fittest.
yeah, if any problems really arise, let us know.
Right.
Otherwise, we'll assume you're still pounding
Yeah.
away at it.
Is it realistic that they might be open by Christmas?
I don't think anymore. I think we're now the last I've heard from him is early in the year, so after Christmas.
Before town meeting.
Early, maybe.
It's a moving target, but
I like it.
I know, right before town meeting. That's all.
Next year?
Yeah, this town meeting coming up now. All right, any more questions?
I have no faith.
Select board forum?
None.
Normally I'm promoting the big quadra dance.
Yeah.
But this year we're not doing it. It's just more or less the date that they were giving us, the 3rd of January.
Yeah, that's a little too close.
It's a little too close to New Year's. We didn't feel like it was going to be worth it. Unfortunately, hopefully it's only a 1-year break.
yeah.
We don't know, but we'll see. A lot of people will miss it, but it just didn't make sense
Yeah.
on the 3rd. So
Well,
Yeah.
that's okay.
we have raised a lot of money, had a lot of good times. So hopefully it'll be back.
Okay. We did get someone who is interested in the health officer position.
Wow, amazing.
So, I think he'll
And
come.
Phil turned him away.
Yeah, no. So he'll probably come, maybe even at our next meeting. So it seems like a great candidate, and I'm looking forward to that, so.
Yeah, I'm sure you are.
All right, anything else from Select Board Forum? Review minutes from,
Yes.
go ahead.
Tom shared with us an email about.
Oh, yes.
So you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Vermont Smoke and Cure is hosting.
Oh, yes.
It's, the governor will be there.
Yep.
And it's more or less a promotion of how a big company, Walmart, has helped a small local company, Vermont
yeah.
Smoke and Cure, give them doors into, customers. Apparently Vermont Smoke and Cure is now in 600 locations
Yeah.
in Walmart. And it's really
And adding staff to this
and they're adding
facility.
staff here.
Yeah.
So they just want to demonstrate that's how that works and how important it is to branch out and have these opportunities. So Monday at 11 o'clock.
I think so.
We were
And the whole
invited.
select board is
Yeah.
invited down to Vermont Smoke and Cure, and the governor will be there, so it should be.
I imagine it's open.
I think
public?
there's a.
I don't know.
You're not sure?
There is an
I'm not
RSVP, I think, right, in that letter?
I didn't see.
Oh, no? I thought there was, but,
I'll double check,
yeah,
but
maybe, maybe not, I don't
yeah.
know.
Thanks for the reminder.
So I put it on my
That'd be
calendar,
good.
but I'm
Yeah.
not sure, it depends on work, but,
Yeah.
it might be, good. And it's a good story all around, for
Oh,
a
yeah.
number of reasons. Economic
Partnership
development,
Yep,
grant,
absolutely.
it started it all, so, great, that's a good reminder. And that is this Monday?
Monday at 11
Okay,
o'clock.
man, time's
Yep.
flying.
That's the 7th.
All right, anything else? That was good, good reminder.
It's a little late right now.
Review minutes for November 20th. We have them in our packet. Need a motion to,
Oh, I can make a motion to approve the minutes with any amendments that are needed.
9th.
I looked them over, I didn't see anything.
I didn't find anything.
There you go.
Okay.
Anything else? No? So with that, all in favor of approving the minutes as presented, always excellent, say aye.
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 Dallas
Thank
got
you.
a big smile on her face.
Consider approving the warrants. We signed an extra one or something
Yeah, we had,
for, because of the holiday.
Yeah, there's because holiday and payroll was in there too. So I'll make a motion to approve the warrants as presented by the town clerk to include payroll.
Okay.
They can
Last week.
reply individually.
I was trying to save myself a little work there.
So the warrants are in the other room, which we'll be going to in a minute. All those in favor of approving the warrants, including payroll, say aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Who gave a second on that? I didn't catch that.
Was that Tom? Phil?
Yeah, that would be me.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, I should turn
Val.
around so you can hear me. That's
Apparently has
that's
read
my
the-
fault.
Merrily has read the invitation to the event on Monday, and they would like an RSVP for
Okay.
anybody who wants to go.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can just do it via email, I think, to
Yep.
the,
Yeah.
yeah.
And sign all of our names to it.
When did it come?
I sent it a
Oh,
couple
week
days ago. I
yeah, it
think.
was a week ago I got one.
No, I don't think it was a week ago. 2 days ago, maybe.
I think I got one
Yesterday
sooner
is-
than that,
Mine
but,
says yesterday.
okay.
That's when I
Yeah.
forwarded it anyway.
Jeez, okay. Yeah, I had already had it for some reason.
Oh, really?
I don't know
Well,
why.
you're the chair.
Yeah, right.
This is more important, yeah.
Well, after I said, I think you should invite the rest of the people. Okay, so now, the next item and last item on the agenda is consider a motion to go into executive session. So this, purpose of this is just to get an update on union negotiations, which Renee is doing. If we were to go into executive session, it'd be the select board, we'd bring Renee in with us. And the reason we go into executive session is because premature discussion of union negotiations would put the town at a disadvantage. So I'll make a motion that that would be the reason we go into
Or
executive session.
public conversation.
Public conversation.
I'll second it, Phil.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And now, we'll need a motion that, which I will make, to go into executive session under provisions 1 V.S.A, state statute 313A, 1, A2, and A3.
I'll second. If you're making a motion.
Yes, I've
Yep.
made that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And so again, reminder, we'll go into executive session. Ken, we can shut off the broadcast. If there were any actions we take, we would come out of executive session, take those actions, and they would be reflected in our minutes.
Sounds good.
All right,
As per usual.
as per usual.
Wow.
All right.